yeah, dude. Let's
Start clicking.
it drives traffic. Like that's it. So I know the potential the show has. So
I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah.
Welcome to it. It is a little after 3 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, so you guys know what time it is. It is time for Talk That Talk. I am your host, Terrell Chatterbox Emerson. I am in studio with two good guys. And if you guys are watching via YouTube Live, we can go ahead and start introducing them to everybody. But really quick, before I do that, I want to thank you guys. If you guys have kind of been rocking with us this entire time, today is the first episode of season 7 of the Talk That Talk radio show. Keep in mind, I didn't count anything before I got here to Vegas. I think we did 2 years back in Cerritos. So technically, I think this is 9, but this is 7 on paper. So I appreciate you guys for rocking with us the entire time. But let's go ahead and get some of these intros done. Let's get the socials done. Let's get all the little morning announcements out the way, and then we can go ahead and get started with the show. But really quick, in case you guys are unfamiliar, I usually like to do the show with my friends, right? And one of the people that I'm getting ready to introduce right now, you guys have seen him before, whether you've watched the show or not. But you probably know him from the fight game here in Vegas. And obviously, anytime I say fight game, I'm talking about one person. Sean Zattel is in the building. Sean, what's going on with you, brother?
What's going on? What's up, Kevin?
Thanks,
You know, I have ulterior motives being on the show. I know Talk That Talk is gonna blow, so I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to get on the bandwagon before
claiming that ticket.
Yes, before all the athletes get on, and he already has athletes on. He has you on, Kevin. But I figure let me just get on every time Terrell asks me that so that when this thing really takes off, I need a little FaceTime, need a little exposure. I said, Terrell, let me get on the show, man. I know you got Max Crosby coming on or whoever. So, Asia Wilson. But let me get 10 minutes, man. But yes, what's up, my man Terrell? What's up, Kevin?
My first of all, let's go ahead and give him another round of applause. My guy Sean. Sean is somebody, like I've told you guys before. Back to the Starting Great Free Press newsroom days, right? It's just a lot of stories that we
my
have.
Sports editor, right?
Man, you're far beyond that, right? You're far beyond where that journey has brought you. And you kind of already talked about it already in terms of who you're sitting next to. But again, as you guys can see, this relationship with the Sporting Tribune is getting stronger and stronger by the day. Kevin Kelly is in the building. Kevin, what's going on with you, brother?
Not much. How you, Terrell?
I am living a dream, man. I am living a dream. As a matter of fact, like I said before, I'm excited that you're starting off season 7 with me. We got a lot of football to talk about. We got a lot of Raiders to talk about. We got a lot of just NFL playoffs to talk about. Sean, I think you're only staying for the first hour today, but we'll try to go ahead and
college football knowledge. Let's be honest with the audience. And when I see Kevin Kelly, I think of the Flushing Flash, the former featherweight champion from Queens, who fought Prince Nassim at the Garden.
Hey, man.
So, Matt,
yeah,
you probably got hands like Kevin Kelly.
And speaking of Kevin Kelly, the Penn State football all-time scorer is their old kicker, Kevin Kelly. So, yeah, my name got a little bit in the sports world. A wrestling announcer too. Kevin Kelly.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I think about it a lot. I think about the rest of the announcer, Kevin Kelly, a lot. That's funny that you said that. Pardon. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and get to it. Really quick, if you guys are watching via our YouTube Live, we appreciate you. At all.
Kevin Kelly, right?
That's exactly who it was.
Yeah.
I'm super happy that somebody else remembers that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, if you guys are watching via our YouTube, we appreciate you. If you would like to do so, all you have to do is go to YouTube, go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk radio show. Once again, go to YouTube, go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk Radio Show. Aside from that, you guys can follow us on Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our Instagram. All of that will be Talk That Talk Radio Show. The one thing that is different, our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. Once again, our Twitter is at Talk That Talk LV. Other than that, we can go ahead and talk some sports, guys. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Really quick, this beautiful show is being shot from the beautiful studio here at the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park here on Sunset in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now we can get to sports talk. Yeah. But really quick, Sean, you were in Allegiant Stadium with me yesterday. Kevin, were you there?
No, I didn't get to.
Okay, I was about to say I seen you earlier this week too. Obviously, we'll get to that in the second hour. But Sean, we were inside of Allegiant yesterday, and we watched the season finale for the Las Vegas Raiders this season, or this year rather, and it was a 34-20 to the LA Chargers. A win would have meant 3 straight victories for this team to end the year. Ultimately, it was not in the cards. What was your takeaway after yesterday's game? And then we can get into some specifics about the season.
Well, I thought you asked a good question in the post game to Antonio, where you asked him, "Do you feel like you ever really had a full card, a good hand dealt to get the results you wanted this season?" And he did what you're supposed to do. He told you got to play with the cards you're dealt, right? You can't make excuses, and he hasn't. Not really. And I didn't know if we'd make it through the night and those scheduled press conferences with the head coach every Monday after every game, home or away. I didn't know for sure if Antonio was gonna make it to that. So when we got through the night, good sign for Antonio Pierce. Then the morning came, you're checking the email.
That was the first thing I checked this morning.
Did something change with the media availability? When they fired Josh McDaniels, the media, we got an email explicitly telling us that Josh McDaniels will no longer be here, and here's our interim coach. They had everything ready to roll out. So Antonio Pierce, it's still, what time is it? About 3:30?
It is 3:22.
3:22 Pacific time, West Coast time. And Antonio Pierce is still the head coach of the Raiders. That's a good sign for Antonio Pierce. They're called today Black Monday, right? Mm-hmm. We're not through Monday yet, but so far good to go. I'll defer to Vinny Bonsignori a little bit, guy who's been covering professional sports longer than we've been alive.
Shout out to Vinny.
And he said he tweeted and he reiterated these thoughts to me when I talked to him during the day, that he thinks it's still up in the air. And that's the sense I got with Antonio Pierce. Leaving last night at Allegiant, I thought this could be it for Antonio. Guys like Brock Bowers, they already talked about him in the past, liked him. I thought he was a great coach, and Brock wasn't being subliminal with that or anything. Brock loves Pierce, and Pierce wore the 89 jersey for the season finale. But so he still has the job. And if I can I get into assessing the job he did?
So wait, quick before we do that, because I do want to do that like in its entirety. So what I'll do really quick, I'll give the floor to Kevin really quick, and then I'll tell you guys kind of how I structure my story, and then we'll talk full season. Yeah. Kevin, if you can you put the season into some words for me?
Yeah, I mean, they ended up winning 2 of the last 3, obviously, which kind of hurts them in the offseason stuff. But I think that you capped it really well with Pierce and his situation right now. I thought he was really candid, opening up about how his playing experience let him be informed about how, you really are, when you're losing, it lands on you as the coach, and when you're winning, it's on the guys. It's the reality of being a coach in any pro sport, but definitely football. And I think it's good for him. I liked his chances with a better roster next year. So I think it's kind of like you got this year out of the way, throw it away, try and build in the offseason, and then you've got a pretty good prospect looking forward.
So really quick, just to let you guys know how I tried to structure the story. And again, all of you guys, both of you guys rather, and a lot of you guys who have been on this show, you guys cover these teams, right? And Sean, you cover athletes specifically in terms of the fight game. You got to cover that a little bit differently. But it's our job to watch a 60-minute football game and boil it down to usually 2 or 3 points, right? And everybody was talking about that Aiden O'Connell interception. Sean, great question in the locker room to Aiden about it. Talk about a professional, right? But that wasn't the biggest thing for me. For me personally, the Raiders forced the punt the first time the Chargers had the ball. The Raiders forced a missed field goal the second time they had the ball. Almost at San Diego. LA scored on every single possession after that. That's where things came. That's where the wheels came off for me, right? 7 straight possessions that end in points. You obviously have the interception in there that ends up being the lone turnover of the game. It's happened all season long, right? But a performance like that kind of muddies the water of what could have been a great storyline, obviously. And I'm going to end with Jakobi Meyers because Sean had a tweet that Sean did something on Twitter that I love to do, and I was extremely excited when he did it. So I'm going to get to that in a second. But before we do that, let's talk about Brock Bowers. I think we continue to give him praise, and it's well-deserved. And I'm going to be completely honest. If there was a guy not named Jaden Daniels in the postseason, I think the Offensive Rookie of the Year will belong to Brock Bowers. But because Jaden is, that's the hardest position on the field, I think it's sewn up for Jaden Daniels, but that still shouldn't cast any aspersions on the season that Brock had, obviously, right? Most catches of any rookie pass catcher in league history. Talk to me.
Yeah.
Ever, bro. And it's the craziest thing in the world because I think you've talked about it maybe the past 4 or 5 weeks in a row in terms of your interviews with Brock. The guy is humble. Like, I loved your question about the Pro Bowl as well. Like, at some point, you're kind of good at this, right? Like, and then you couple that with, obviously, Brock is the number 1 target. But the Raiders have a number 1 receiver in Jakobi Meyers. And
although I'd say about Jakobi,
talk to me.
And remember, the tweet.
Go to the tweet.
Tweet Terrell's referring to is I said in Costa Mesa in July when they were in training camp. So there's no reason this guy can't be a 1,000-yard receiver. Even 2023, when I first got to cover the team, I'd watched Davante Adams and Jakobi in warmups. There wasn't this huge gulf. Davante's Davante,
right?
But I'm like, this Jakobi Meyers guy is nice. Like but with that said, I think on a championship caliber team, he's a hell of a WR2. Mm-hmm. I don't think on a championship team, ideally, he's a WR1. I think if you got everything perfect, like the Eagles with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, you get or Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolden back in the day, Randy Moss, Chris Carter. That second guy hovers right around 1,000, and you want that WR1 to hover around 1,500. And I think Jakobi is the 1,000 guy. He's the guy. So, yeah, I don't know if the Raiders should look after T. Higgins. That's expensive. Maybe something in the draft, although probably the fan base wants to trade up for a quarterback in that top 3 to 4. But that just all with Jakobi. And
yeah.
And to your point, too, I think that speaks to how amazing of a year Brock has had. Like, obviously, they have Jakobi, who, like you said, had a good year, is at least a solid WR2 on a competing team, but defenses had no one else to focus on really besides Brock all year, and among that, he still was this dominant. I think that, if you add another weapon next to those two, the game opens up a lot for both of them. So
everyone's the whole receiving core, like everyone, if you could get a legit top WR1. Jacoby's an excellent 2, and Trey Tucker slots in perfectly as a 3, as a field stretcher. And then you got Brock and Mike at the tight ends. And now you're working with a pretty good receiving core throughout the whole board. But Tyreek Hill, I don't know about that right now.
Yeah, I wish
know about that. Maybe T. Higgins, he's expensive. We'll see. But
T. Higgins is interesting. T. Higgins is interesting, right? And that's kind of where I'm leaning a little bit. But really quick, first of all, I loved everywhere that you guys took that, right? But in terms of Jakobi Meyers, I'm going to ask you guys one question. And Sean, you kind of talked about it really quick. I've said this for the past 8 to 10 weeks now. Everybody kept asking about the Raiders rebuild, right? What does it look like? What does it look like? What does it look like? I had to let people know there was a billboard in Summerlin a couple months ago, actually a couple years ago, or last year rather. It was, I'm trying to remember the exact order. It was Derek Carr, it was Josh Jacobs, it was the Raider logo, it was Davante Adams, and it was Max Crosby.
Yeah.
I said the rebuild is here. What do you guys mean? Like, this is the rebuild. Once you trade Devontae, you're fully in it, whether you want to be or not. Which is why the questions about getting rid of Mac came up, right? Which he continued to shoot down. So considering that, I feel like the Raiders have been building toward what the new look Raiders look like, right? Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers. I'm happy that you said it already, but I'm gonna continue to say the name Michael Mayer. I know what I saw at Notre Dame. I don't care what anybody else is. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. I know what I saw. So because of that, I know what the Raiders have at the top two positions at the tight end. Therefore, that's where you kind of talked about Jakobi Meyers being that guy. Jakobi Meyers being that guy, right? Therefore, if I'm looking at the way that this team needs to run their offense, Antonio Pierce talked about the way that he would like to run the football, talked about how he doesn't want to throw the football 40 times a game. That sounds a lot like you have a two tight end set with a couple of workhorses in terms of your backfield. Whether a Lawrence Maroney, whether a LeGarrette Blount, i.e. I'm naming two people that played in the New England system with two tight ends. Can anybody name their number one receiver back then when you had Aaron Hernandez on one side and Rob Gronkowski on the other? You can't.
That's Edelman, maybe, but I don't even know if he was there in the Hernandez Gronk days.
Yeah,
He might have came.
He might have
second.
Yeah, right. So it might have been. Damn. Now I'm starting. Now I'm almost quizzing myself.
Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola.
right. So that's where you're going down. So the reason why I said all that to say, let's look at Baltimore.
Yeah.
Couple of years ago, it was Mark Andrews. Everybody knew this is where he's going. Isaiah Likely looks amazing, right? We know what he can be. Can Jacoby be number one in that system? Let's look at Kansas City. Can Jacoby be a number one in that system? I think people expect just because for you to be a number one, you have to be Devontae, or you have to be Calvin Johnson. No, you don't.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think if you swap Jacoby on the Ravens right now, he raises their floor and ceiling, and I think that's a great point. It does matter a lot about roster construction and what you're expecting out of a wide receiver one. You don't always need like 1,500 yard seasons from him. But I think to that point, they can go out and focus on the two tight end spot and building around them and the offensive line, and he can be that. I think so personally.
It's hard. The two teams you mentioned have arguably the two best quarterbacks in football.
I completely agree. That's
yeah. Patrick Mahomes will take Juju Smith-Schuster
and make him a legend
and win the Super Bowl. He'll throw a game-winning touchdown pass.
Kevin is hilarious for that, by the way. Oh my god!
No, but Mayer, I'm with you. Mayer can play. It's just he's now in the shadow of the next generational tight end,
exactly.
the next guy. But I think
wasn't Aaron Hernandez too?
Yeah, but also like you see Andrews take a step back too when he
has
to share it. Which I think you kind of have to. It's tough for them both to thrive at that level,
right? Because
they're so intertwined and playing. You don't line two up in every play and whatnot. So,
well, I mean, it goes back to what Sean just said, right? I think if you do get to those situations where you want 3 wide left and you have one tight end on the field, I mean, even Mike knows what's happening. Brock is going to be out there. It won't be you. So I think it's just one of those things to where, given the way AP has said that he wants to run his offense, it sounds a lot like a bunch of workhorses. And just a two tight end set for me fits what he's been describing. And granted, and now this is where Sean can kind of pick up a little bit, just in terms of what he's dealt with all season long in terms of Antonio Pierce. Sean actually opened this up by talking about my question to him, and Sean actually reiterated everything that I said exactly to a T. And the reason why I asked that question is because sometimes as reporters, we all know in this room, you ask a question either knowing you're not going to get an answer, or you ask the question knowing that it can be combustible, whatever the case may be. Sean just said it. AP has been professional during a 10-game losing streak, so we know what we're going to get from Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce answered my question by not answering my question. When I asked the question originally, Antonio Pierce was smiling. He kind of shrugged and was like, I had 53 guys. My ears perked when he said that. And before we move on, I hand this over to Sean. I mentioned this 4 weeks ago. And I said, if it's true what's been told to me, if Antonio Pierce wanted to start the year with Aiden O'Connell under center, and somebody overruled him, people aren't going to like this answer, but this entire season is a wash. Entire season is a wash. Because that means for a second straight year, AP didn't make the decision.
Part of that falls on Antonio too. And it's a reality when the franchise has given much more money to this option, Gardner Minshew, than they gave your 4th round pick, Aiden O'Connell. You would think there's going to be, they didn't pay him for no reason. They want to see a return on investment. They at least want to see their investment and what they got at. What do we got here? We gave him $20 million plus for a reason. I think it was 2 years, $25 million for Gardner, right? So, but Antonio, I knew that's what he was getting at when he said my gut. And then Vinny was smart enough to say, well, in regard, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but in the quarterback situation, is that part of what you're getting at? He answered straight up, yes. But Bill Walsh literally benched Joe Montana in the playoff game. Bill Belichick, the Patriots had, I think, around $100 million tied up in Drew Bledsoe, and there was legit talk. It's not like Brady came in and set records. Brady was a winner. He came in before he became Tom Brady. He was just a winner, and so there was this pressure, especially after Bledsoe held it down in the AFC title game when Brady had to go out against Pittsburgh. And so are you really going to go with 6th round pick Tom Brady over Drew Bledsoe was the #1 overall pick, who was the face of the Patriots. Belichick went with the best player. It didn't matter that Brady made a fraction of what Bledsoe made. And same thing with Bill Walsh. Joe Montana was in his prime winning Super Bowls. He brought in Steve Young. And when Montana didn't perform, Walsh benched him against the Vikings. And I think it was the 87 NFC divisional game. Again, a big upset against Minnesota. Steve Young came in and rallied. So I feel for Antonio. And what I like about Antonio is he gives coach speak too, but he speaks in general on a more genuine and honest level than most NFL head coaches. But those guys who are more tight-lipped that we don't particularly always enjoy what we get out of them, they win. And Antonio wasn't able to do that this year. And just to kind of bridge that into my assessment of him over the year, again, I like Antonio. I like as a person and then also as a media person that he's a more direct, straightforward kind of man than most people in professional sports with a lot on the line are. They're very guarded. He's less guarded than most of them are. So on a personal standpoint, I'm happy he may indeed get another shot. But to critique him as well, he had a little bit of hubris early in the year, particularly after they beat Baltimore. And my advice to Antonio Pierce would be stay the humble down-home AP who went 5-4 when he took over as interim coach. And don't be the guy who was kind of starting to feel, and this went for the whole team. They were feeling themselves after Baltimore and the season was, you knew what this season was going to be when they lost to Carolina and Andy Dalton. Justin Herbert, the only guy who was as good as Justin Herbert in Allegiant Stadium all season was Andy Dalton. And those two, they carved the Raiders up and put on excellent performances at Allegiant. But that's when you knew the season immediately was not going to live up to expectation when they dropped the ball and really got blown out against the Panthers. So for Pierce, he says the two most things he learned was his patience and his gut, to go with his gut. And, it almost felt like, to me, my vantage point, there was a little tension between Telesco and Pierce in that, this is the guy who gets the job over Champ Kelly, my guy, Champ Kelly. I was the interim coach. He's the interim general manager. You give it to the guy that kind of got fired because of the beat down my team.
We put on him.
Right, 63 points. And then I remember when inevitably it got brought up to Telesco when he got the job, and he kind of didn't like it.
He did not like it.
And part of me is you really didn't expect Tom, and Tom's a nice guy, but you didn't expect that to come up, and it came up in a joking way. And you could tell he resented it.
He did not like it.
He resented it.
I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
You just said it. That lost him his job. Plain as simple.
You could argue. Yeah.
I'll put it this way.
Was a nail in the coffin.
For sure, right? But
and he put together a good roster that Brandon Staley underachieved. To Tom's credit. He put together Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Keenan
Look at
Allen.
the roster now.
Right.
It still reeks of Tom Telesco, right? So I'm not mad at the move, even when even when Mark originally made it, right? Now, the point that you go back to is it's like-minded individuals. And that this is where it kind of gets uncomfortable, right? In terms of Antonio Pierce, because Kevin just said it. I think the biggest feather in his cap is being a former player. Everything that AP does gives me former player. You think I'm not gonna bring up the fact that I hung 63 on you?
All the way down to Raider Nation. Just like I said, like I like him. It affords him some slack that a guy like Josh McDaniels doesn't get.
But also, and I agree, and you heard that, especially after the interim year, where everyone that lives in Vegas was really high on the guy and loved it. That like he was that close to the players and stuff. But you're seeing some of the criticism stem from that now too, where it's almost like a little bit too boys clubby in the locker room, and like there is somewhat like a not that serious professional tone that should be in a 4-13 team. Like while it does afford you all those leeway and being able to deal with players and fans know that, it also can come back to bite you in a lot of those ways.
No, I completely agree. What's so interesting is you have to there is a fine line to walk, right, in terms of AP. However, and this is where I think firing, especially NFL coaches, after 1 year, and I know it happens more than any other sport, it just doesn't make sense to me. Only because it is a culture setter, right? And we'll talk about this later on when we talk about UNLV basketball, just in terms of making a decision to fire a guy. If you don't really have, you don't have to have the person in mind, but if you don't have a route in mind to replace the person, right? And Eric Harper is somebody who clearly had a route. Whether you like the route, whether it turns out to be a bad route, he had one, regardless of the fact. The problem is, if the Raiders get rid of Antonio Pierce today, what's the route?
Yeah. Don't ask me.
Nope. I'll put the camera on you because I thought you had one for me.
No, I don't think so. I don't think in terms of. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of coaches out there, obviously, right now. Like Vrabel is vying for the Pat's job and stuff. But like you said, you have to have an idea of the direction you want to go. Right. Whether they draft, what direction they go in the draft, all these things are up in the air, and I don't think there's an obvious direction or path that they go. So I don't know.
Unfortunately, Sean, this one is yours after this. I think back to when the Lakers hired Mike Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing was, when I was doing my radio show at Cerritos then, might have been high school, I was telling people that the issue wasn't the hire
The fit.
of Mike Brown. It wasn't even a fit. Respectfully speaking, if I'm grabbing you from Cleveland, and this is no shot at Mike Brown because you are who you are, right? I'm a firm believer in letting your coach. Therefore, I got to pick guys that I want to coach with. And you're obviously going to give me my players, but I utilize them how I want to utilize them. First move by Mike Brown, he hired Eddie Jordan as a top assistant. Now, if you guys may not know Eddie Jordan, I'm not saying he's a bad coach by no means, but Eddie Jordan was the head coach in Washington when they kept running into Cleveland. And I looked at my dad and I was like, I'm not going to lie. If I'm in that front office, I'll call Mike Brown in. Why? Tell me why him. And that's where I go with it, right? We could talk about the offensive coordinator Luke Getsy hire originally because everybody had questions the moment that it was done. But this is where it goes back to being a 1-year head coach, right? Antonio Pierce, let's just say he gets a full season next season. Let's say it results in 4 more wins, regardless of the fact. Antonio Pierce is going to handle next season completely different than he handled this season.
I think so.
Well, going back to your point too, before I fully let you take over, the Tom Telesco point. When I heard the morning press conference this morning, in the back of my mind, I was like, so I feel like everybody's a professional, right? But Mark Davis is going to have to be the adult in that room during that meeting.
That's where it starts.
Because in my humble opinion, I believe those gentlemen are going to sit down. Tom is going to question the job that AP did. And AP let's just say AP's first thing to fire back with was, well, first of all, the guy under center, I didn't want week 1. And you said, let's go back to, well, we gave him $25 million. Who decided to do that? And that's where Mark Davis is going to have.
But Tom's trump card right now is I drafted Brock Bowers. And remember, there was even speculation that there was a coin flip, meaning Antonio, who's a defensive-minded guy, no defensive players have been taken off the board yet. So he was very logical. If this is what happened, if Antonio was, I want this defense, I want the number one guy off the board on defense. No one's even went off the board yet. That's a very logical thing. It just so happens Tom Telesco, to his credit, selected the next great tight end. So that he's got an ace in the hole with being the guy who selected Brock Bowers with his first ever pick.
And I know he didn't do it for the silver and black, right? But Kevin and I just talked about that Charger roster. If they're not the Chargers, they win. I think the Chargers.
They were the most underachieving team in football for a couple of years there with that roster.
Absolutely, yeah. Like if again, the Chargers are the Clippers of football, so they just might be snake bitten, and that's why they didn't do anything with the roster. I grew up an Angel fan. That's a snake bitten franchise. Like when I look at what that roster looked like in 2013, 2014, 2015, I'm like, and we didn't go to the playoffs. Like that doesn't even compute for me, right? So Tom Telesco definitely has that. Now, in terms of Antonio Pierce, if you brought me in to do a job, you gotta let me do the job.
Yes. If
you want to be the head coach, then you make that Gardner decision. You go and start Gardner. And the funny thing is, I love this field because we all take this risk of going out here, saying something, being married to it, having a person see you and be like, hey, you're the one that said, and it is what it is, right? I remember before the season started, and nobody has like hung it over my head, but before the season started, no respect to Gardner Minshew, I was like, if I know Antonio Pierce, and I feel like I know a little bit, I feel like he's going to go with Aiden.
I recommended Aiden as well.
And most of us who have been around the group and been around AP, you felt the way. You tore the way. I'm not going to lie. The day he came out and made the announcement, I was at an Aviator game sitting next to Dick Calvert. I looked at him and was like, I was wrong. I came here on the show and said, I was wrong. I still don't get it. And now let's fast forward 18 weeks, 19 weeks now. I was right. Sean was right. AP, we knew that something didn't look
AP,
right.
You were right too, apparently.
AP, you were right. So, I mean, again, for me, you can't really judge me if I'm AP, considering you got us off on the wrong foot.
And then, like you said, head coach in football is the most like hot seat job ever. And also, like you said, it comes way more down to front office roster construction, what you're able to even do with that roster as a coach. So it does. I don't think that expecting a turnaround from a team in 1 or even 2 years, maybe even 3 as a head coach,
depending on where you're picking up from,
is a long enough leash, like at all. So yeah, I think it would be a mistake to go in a different direction at this point.
I mentioned Walsh and Belichick earlier. I think Belichick went 5-11 his first season with New England. I think Walsh may have even went 3-13 in San Francisco. Jimmy Johnson went 1-15.
Let's not go that far.
Yeah.
Do y'all remember that 1-15 Dan Campbell year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're probably going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, now look at it. Yeah.
So for whatever that
linebacker, or no,
tight end.
But still, raw guy.
He was on the roster when they went 0-16. So he's been a part of 0-16 as a player, 1-15 as a coach, and now they just won the North back-to-back years. And they're the top seed. And you got to go through for it. And everybody wanted me to kick AP in the tail for what?
Well, what they got, Dan, was his peanut butter to his jelly, Ben Johnson. And I watched 49ers a lot.
Yeah.
And Kyle Shanahan is a big reason why I think he's struggling is he had Robert Saleh, he had D'Amico, he had what he not. Kyle is a brainiac. He's a play scheming master. D'Amico and Robert Saleh are the rah-rah. They're the heart. They're the fight. AP is the heart and the fight. He needs his Kyle Shanahan. He needs his Ben Johnson. He needs his whiz kid who can dial it up, and he gets those boys to run through a wall.
Which is why AP has to, unfortunately.
And Luke Getsy, unfortunately, was not that guy.
He got to answer for that, right? Like
yeah.
Luke Getsy, that's a stain on him. And going back to what we said before about what may be a stand on Tom Telesco, there are some stands on AP, right? Bad use of timeouts, non-use of timeouts. There are plenty of different things, right?
Yes.
And also, and this is another thing when I said I think he'll go into next season and be a little different. What I also think, in terms of his learning experience that he talked about this morning during the press conference, in terms of that feeling, I remember my dad's a Cowboy fan, I know, but my dad didn't know. That is gross. What just happened?
I'm not. I'm saying that is.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
No.
All right. I'm gonna kick you out. Okay.
It's a good fan base, actually.
I like the Steelers. So I don't know where I'm sitting there.
I have no problem with you.
Okay.
I'm scared of Mike Tomlin. And anybody who stands in front of Pittsburgh has to beat Pittsburgh. And I'm going to stand on that. But what? Going back to the original pick that my dad had made, my dad told me what the Jimmy Johnson years looked like. And it goes back to something that me and Kevin are going to talk about when we discuss Kevin Kruger. I can't wait to tell Kruger to his face. I've talked to people who played with Kruger and against Kruger. And I've asked them to describe him. Some of the words they use, I can't use right now in terms of him as a player, right? The problem for me is I don't see the same guy as a coach. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about what switch needs to be hit for this program. Maybe Kevin Kruger needs to tap more into Kevin Kruger, the player, because we need that feistiness, we need that fieriness, we need that desire to show. Going back to the Antonio Pierce point, next season, again, it was his first year, right? First full year with the job. Maybe you don't head into week one, no, this is my guy. This is my guy. I know that you guys paid him. This is my guy. That brashness that we know that he had as a player, that we know that he had as a linebacker coach, that we know that he had as a collegiate coach, a high school coach, everything in this press conference this morning let me know that he tried his best to curb that.
Yeah, and I think, Sean, you brought up a great point about how you have to, as a coach or even coordinator, whatever it is, you have to know yourself and know your limits. And like you said, a huge energy guy, and you have to be able to bring in the surgeons, the guys that can draw up all the playbooks and stuff. And if you don't, like you said, that's on you. It's your job to build out your coaching staff and complement all the different skills that you don't have. So, yeah, I think that, obviously when you look at media, like we mentioned, and then it deals with the players and all that, it's amazing. But yeah, you have to build out a better image of your program. So I think that does fall.
It's almost like, because you're mentioning Telesco did some things wrong and Pierce did some things wrong. It's almost like everybody contributed to an underwhelming season, and adults have to go in the room and be adults. This is where I messed up at. This is where you messed up at. This is where you did right. This is where I did right. And put their heads together. And if this contingency is gonna stay together, Telesco and Pierce under Mark Davis, they just gotta have it out like men and then come back better next year. And they got a lot of cap space. They got a high draft pick. They could easily maybe move up in the draft to get their quarterback, or they got enough money. If a good vet's available, they could handle that. This roster was never really healthy anyways. It might not be far away as it seemed during that 10-game losing streak. So
I keep telling people the exact same thing. And one of the things that Kevin just said that I think is kind of like the takeaway from today, going into next season, AP has to get the right surgeon. He has to. And for me, that's like the word of the day, just in terms of that, because the Raiders lacked acute execution. Right? In those fine moments, those fine details, it's like the Raiders just didn't have it. And the funny thing is, going back to the moments that I've given AP as credit, being a defensive guy, I look at the numbers on third down, right? I look at penalty numbers. I look at just a lot of different numbers that, like you said, go in AP's favor. The problem is things that didn't go in AP's favor, they were haywire. Like, it's not even like you barely got over the hump. It went the wheels came off here. Going back to the Andy Dalton story, right?
Okay. Aiden's pick before the half. They're up 10-9.
Yep.
And Antonio is showing some growth. He's being aggressive before the half. He hasn't particularly been aggressive on offense. Most of the year, they're not taking shots down the field. Now, once Getsy gets rid of is gone and Scott Turner comes in, the offense opens up a little bit, looks a little better.
Right.
The offensive line starts to take shape. But anyways, O'Connell throws that pick, and that was the microcosm of the year. In a lot of games, not Carolina, but in a lot of games, the season opener in LA against the Chargers, the loss to Denver, a game they were in control of at one point, and Minshew throws the pick six. Minshew throws a pick in the first half against the Chargers in the opener. Then he has an awful fumble. And a game the Raiders are in control of totally gets away from. The finale against the Chargers. Aiden is going through his read, panics a little bit, throws into traffic, goes from 10-9 to 17-10 Chargers, and they get the ball at the half. That was just
add my KC road game in there too.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the defense, despite never really being fully healthy, played better than it would seem if you just look at the naked numbers without context. Oftentimes, the offense couldn't get out of its own way, and in football, the defense will hold on and they'll hold tough, and then eventually the offense does something demoralizing and the dam breaks. And that's what happened to the Raiders a lot this season.
And I'm happy that you said that because, right, was that you this morning that talked about Roberts?
And that was more Gardner who did that. Aiden did it in the last game of the year, but that was for Gardner who really just shot them in the foot at inopportune times and sunk their chances in a number of games.
And Gardner, maybe he did talk to me directly. In LA, I can't remember if I asked the question or not, but he talked about this essentially being the worst season he's had. And sometimes as an athlete, first of all, if you play long enough, one of the seasons is going to be yours, just by default, right? And you can see it on his face. He even said it. I've never turned the ball over this much in my life. Like, not even like NFL career. I've never turned the ball over this much. Granted, I think maybe, and this is going back to AP learning, right? Maybe Gardner felt like he wasn't wanted as the number one. Maybe he started to give that off a little bit, right? But going back to everything that you just said, I was talking to my brother who's a diehard Raider fan. Shout out to Jarrell. On the phone with Jarrell last night, and we're going over Raider season. I'm like, hey, don't panic. And he's not panicking, but I'm like, don't panic. I'm like, and I'm shooting off the top of my brain. I'm like, you know that y'all had Christian Wilkinson for like all 5 games? And he was like, well, I mean, you're right. I said, so next year, without doing anything, you're dropping him back in the middle. Max is coming back after missing games for the first time in his professional career. He's coming back. Jacorian Bennett probably made the biggest jump from last year to this season, in my opinion.
For sure.
I know some people might mention Isaiah at the safety position. I'm cool with either one of those. But Jacorian Bennett, what I saw last year, I was like, he may be heading towards getting cut. Right. I watched what he did before he got hurt this year, and I was like, oh, the Raiders got a dog in the secondary.
That's the blueprint for Camryn Richardson.
Absolutely.
He's got to hope to be the Jacorian Bennett of next season.
Yeah, he has to, right? Yeah. And just from that standpoint, we kind of just talked about it. I don't think the Raiders necessarily have to blow this thing up to make it work. However, I do want to give you guys a couple numbers really quick and move on to the playoffs. The Raiders went 4-13 this year. The Raiders went 0-6 in the AFC West. Do you guys know the last time the Raiders didn't win a divisional game?
Couldn't have been that long ago. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm with it. Give me a random answer. Because in my mind, I'll tell you this before I let you guys know. I'm doing my research and I'm typing my story, and as I'm doing it, I start to scroll through the Raider seasons. In my mind, I said, I'm not gonna have to go further than 2012. And now I wait for you guys to know.
So you did. It's a nice hint.
Yeah.
It's nice of you to give us that hint.
06.
06, what you got?
08.
Kevin Kelly, that was on the nose. Whoa. That was on the nose, brother. So, shout out to you. It was 2006. The Raiders won 2 games that year. They beat Arizona and they beat Pittsburgh. They lost every other game on the schedule. So, the Raiders haven't not won at least one game in their division in almost 20 years. That doesn't help AP.
No, it doesn't.
But also, to your
Talk to me
about like the the guys that have taken a jump on defense.
Mm-hmm.
They also have like 7 or 8, maybe 9 starters not returning on the defense. So
Spillane is up.
Yes.
Nate Hobbs.
But yeah,
I've been talking about Nate Hobbs all season long. If you have the opportunity to go into a Raider locker room and just talk to somebody, Nate might be my favorite person to just talk to. Like
Him and Jack.
that's somebody. That's another person, right? That's somebody, in my opinion, that Nate Hobbs. We talk about being a Raider. Unless you're gonna sign Nate and hope to turn him into something else, I'm never getting rid of Nate.
Yeah.
If I'm a Raider, I'm sorry. This is one guy that's not.
But so with this any opening on your defense, I think it's so key that Pierce has a say in the direction that they're going in, is able to give input to the roster moves that are made, because you get so handicapped if you just are given a roster without any say and do whatever you want.
Absolutely. And on top of that, if the GM isn't listening to your head coach in terms of what I need, so now you've got, and again, how do I put this without putting it? Sean, you've been around the team. That CJ Stroud thing eventually came out. We heard that at the time we heard coaches may have wanted CJ, right?
Was this Jaden? You're thinking?
No, this was CJ 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And the problem with that wasn't
that Ziegler?
you're probably
It was
so you're
Ziegler.
probably not going to get that, right? You're probably not going to get it. Now, going back to last season, everybody knew. Before we was able to kind of say it out loud, everybody knew AP wanted Jaden.
Right.
Washington knew they wanted Jaden. Therefore, I knew going into it, either the Raiders are going to get fleeced or they're not going to get Jaden. One of the two. And they didn't get Jaden, right? However, let's just say over the last 2 seasons, Antonio Pierce and or that coaching staff couldn't get the players that they wanted in terms of CJ Stroud, Jaden Daniels.
That's why I go back to Bowers, because I think Pierce would love to hold that against Telesco. Like, well, look in San Francisco, they get Kyle Shanahan. They trade the motherboard to get Trey Lance. It didn't work, but his GM did. Got his coach his man, and if he didn't pick Brock Bowers, I think he'd play that card. You see what Jaden Daniels did. We should have gave up whatever I told you to give up to get him, but I drafted Brock Bowers. So
You really be mad at me for that.
yes,
So now you take everything that you just coupled with everything that I just said, and now I'm looking at it from the outside looking in, thinking, well, if they couldn't CJ Stroud, which I don't think they could, and you couldn't get Jaden Daniels, which I don't think you could, what did you do? And with all due respect to think about the names I'm about to name, with all due respect to Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell, respectfully, and Gardner Minshew, none of those 4 even fit the mold of what AP has asked for. You know who does? Desmond Ridder. And
Justin
he's
Fields.
not necessarily that great. Justin Fields. And Desmond hasn't necessarily been that great, right? And also, I asked my brother, too, before the season started, I asked him about the prospect of Russell Wilson. How does that look now? Jeez Louise.
better than Gardner. All due respect to Gardner.
Definitely looks better than Gardner, right? And again, man, just to kind of put a bow on this, if that's the right phrase to use, the Raiders do have a 6th pick in this draft, right? And Kevin, you can take over after this. I said it 2 weeks ago, I think, and I said everybody panicking about the Raiders. Oh, they're not going to get Shedeur, they're not going to get Cam. I said if the Raiders end up picking 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere right there, and they go and get Mykel Williams from Georgia, who's dealt with some ankle injuries, but let's say they go get the defensive lineman from Penn State. I don't know that the Raiders made the wrong decision. Like, I know everybody wants Shedeur Sanders. I know everybody wants Cam Ward. If the Raiders take the best available defender as the 6th overall pick, I'm not going to look at the Raiders draft board and say you guys did it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to ask the same. I was going to say, what direction do you think they should go in? I think they're in such a spot right now.
I think you question if you can trade into the top 3.
Yeah.
If you can't, then you draft the best available defender.
I suspect it'd be really hard to trade up into the top 3. So, given that, I think that you just take best available. I think there's such an opportunity to just go wherever. Like I said, they have so many openings on the defense, and this is such a, especially edge heavy, but defense heavy draft, where I think you can really just go in any direction if you're not going to be able to get Cam or Shedeur, which I don't think they're able.
Do you guys like Ashton Jeanty going early?
Every mock ever that I've looked at has him to the Cowboys, but I think the Raiders are a real, like, I think it'd be a risk to take him that early. I wouldn't do it, but I would not be surprised if they do. Just
So do you
because
play the backfield and wait for Cam Scatterbo?
that's
Is
another
it
mock.
Scatterbo or is it Scatterbo? I never heard it pronounced too.
Yeah, so have I. But yeah, I think that you can do that completely with where they're at. And then, like you said, there's still some running back talent late in this draft, so you don't have to get Genty early.
And Cam is an Arizona State kid, so maybe that helps too. AP did say this morning, and Sean, I know you were listening to it. He did say this morning that he's not that far removed from the college game. So he has a pretty good beat on the guys in this draft. Specifically, he was talking about the quarterback position, but he has his eyes on a couple of different guys. I'm interested to see what his draft board looks like and if it differs or how much.
If the Giants weren't high up, then I think they have an easier chance of moving up to get Shador, because I think Shador and Dion might pull what Ethan and Arch Manning pulled in 2004. Like, no, we're not going number one to San Diego Chargers. We're going to play New York because we want to, and yeah, we're going to force that to happen. And yeah, if the Giants weren't up there, because New York is such a great market, that I think it kind of sucks that the Raiders may not end up with Shador Sanders, because he wanted to be here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It felt like all momentum and all roads were leaning towards that, and now it's not. I still wouldn't be surprised, specifically if Shador does what Eli did in 2004. This is the team I want to play for. Make it happen. Let the other team know I don't really want to play for you. And I think if it was any other team not named the New York Giants, this is the Tennessee Titans or the Cleveland Browns, they'd get pushed out the way for the big market.
I think
New York's a big market too.
Yeah,
And this is
you're
right.
Titans, you have to go kicking and screaming, because
You have
you have to. There's two elite quarterbacks, and next year is coming up. Quarterback drafts realistically not as good, and they're not an opportunity or a chance to like wait a few years to do.
I like the Manning kid though. He's the
Arch.
Him too, yeah.
Yeah,
But like generally, the pool of talent seems to be lower than. So I think, even if they don't want to be there, you got to convince them somehow. You have the first pick.
you gotta go Pat Riley on him.
Yeah, exactly. You got to make that happen.
But again, and we can wrap up with this. I told my dad too, certain teams, if they call me, I'm not. You see something I don't. If I'm in baseball and the Yankees call up a prospect, I'm calling them up the next day. I know, because I know what you guys do in the farm system. I'm never trading him. Same thing with Bill Belichick, right? If he calls and asks about my third string tight end, I'm starting him. Like, clearly you see something that I don't. And I think that's what, for whatever reason, and this is where I will put another feather in his cap, Tom Telesco's ability to identify talent is kind of crazy. So, again, if AP and Tom Telesco are not on the same page, obviously one has to go. If not, both has to go. But Mark has a serious decision to make, because one might be roster construction and one might be actually keeping it together. So,
Right, this isn't a package deal like Ziegler and McDaniels.
word. Right. So we were supposed to do 35 minutes on the Raiders. I think we did about 45. So we're somewhere in there. But we can wrap up real quick with wrap up the first hour with playoff talk. We can start on the AFC. We can start with the AFC. Where do you guys want to start first?
Let's go AFC.
AFC? All right, cool. So if we're going to AFC, you obviously got to start with Kansas City, right? Kansas City being the top seed, but they are followed by Buffalo, who will host Denver, followed by Baltimore, who will host your Pittsburgh Steelers, Kevin. And then the Houston Texans and the LA Chargers will be your 4-5 matchup. Which matchup do you guys like the most? Who do you guys see coming out of the AFC? Where do you guys want to take it first?
I think Bills Broncos could be like fun, underrated fun. I think the Bills sometimes struggle with mobile quarterbacks. We've seen Lamar do it to them. So I think Bo could really do something to that defense, and that could be for a fun first round matchup.
Does that rookie wall hit him though?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's way more likely to hit him than Jaden. I'll say that. But yeah, I think he could. I wouldn't pick the Broncos, but I think they'll keep it close.
Like, remember Lamar, one of his first years, he played his first playoff game, just had a rough game, wasn't able to replicate what he did in the regular season. So
the rookie wall thing, that's for sure. But yeah, that's my pick.
What's yours, Sean?
I think the Chargers can beat the Texans.
That's where I'm at.
I think like they're a physical, consistent, reliable team. Shout out to Jim Harbaugh, really a year or so ahead of schedule. Like this roster
found money. I was going to say, no one expected them to be here at all coming into the year. So yeah,
right? Like Telesco, it was a very expensive but talented roster, and that to get them to really rebuild under Harbaugh and Herbert. They basically Austin Eckler's gone, Keenan Allen's gone. You still got Mack and Bosa, but they're either injured or a little bit on the decline. Both of them, even though they could still both play any given day. Especially Mack can one game out there, Mack decides to be the best edge rusher in football.
Two,
yeah,
and they're both against the Raiders.
Right. Usually against the Raiders.
And also Texans are beat up right now.
Yeah.
If there's a time to
super
get them,
beat up.
Right. I mean, obviously they're losing 2 of their top 3 receivers. They're beat up. So, I think the Chargers definitely got a chance. I'd probably pick them personally.
Me too. No, I think I'm going with
That's 3 of us
with LA,
So-
with the Chargers.
It's CJ that has a chance to become, I think, the 6th quarterback ever to win a playoff game in his first 2 years, like 1 in each year. But tough battle.
If you can look that up, just while we're having this conversation, I'd be interested to know those other 5 because I damn near want to guess. I almost want to guess. Like I feel like I can kind of come up with maybe 2 of those names, 3 of those names. We'll see. But the only one that we didn't talk about was Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I feel like in terms of Baltimore now, everybody's looking at Lamar Jackson like, okay, we were wrong. You can play quarterback. And by the way, all of y'all who said that he couldn't coming out of college, that was something, by the way, that in the midst of that conversation happening, I said it then. It sounds like you guys are trying to convince yourself that that's not a quarterback because it doesn't look like what you guys want it to look like. But I feel like everybody's past that now. And because we're past that, I feel like everybody's looking at Lamar Jackson with the Josh Allen lens. Dog, are you going to win or not?
Yes. That's all that's left to do. You've literally done everything else. As a 2-time MVP, he might be a 3-time MVP, had an amazing season this year. That's it. It's just people want to see if Lamar can deliver in the postseason. He had the number 1 seed last year. I get the sense from football people that they kind of feel like the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, but they lose. They lose more than the other team. They lost to the Raiders at home, and Lamar in the postseason. So I think everybody just wants to see him deliver in the postseason, and there's no reason to think he can't this year. I think the AFC. I feel like in the NFC, we know it's going to come down to Philly and Detroit, but it being more of a 3-headed monster in the AFC. Makes it more interesting because we could wind up. I don't know how the seeding is going to go in round 2. We could wind up with Baltimore and Buffalo in the AFC Championship because either team could go into KC and knock off the Chiefs. But
and a lot of it too might depend on their path to get there because like the Chiefs get a bye while the Ravens have to play the Steelers, and that's
exactly.
Even if they win, that's a matchup that you're going to get beat up and like a rough game. So. Then you have to another one to get to the Chiefs. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is going to depend on what happens in the first round and the bumps that teams see on the way to the AFC Championship.
The Ravens have to run the ball. Do not turn this into Lamar. We're going to prove that Lamar is the best quarterback and he can put up 300 in a playoff game. And no. Pound the rock with Derrick Henry and pound the rock with Lamar off the options and all that. And then when the defense is tired of being bludgeoned over the head by the run, then Lamar can cook and open and carve them up down the field. But I feel like, I got to refresh my memory. They didn't have Derrick Henry, obviously, in the AFC title game last year, but it felt like they tried to put the game in Lamar's hands too much. And that's what's great about getting Derrick Henry is like, no, run first, run. And then when they're cheating up, Lamar can start to cook them because it's not like this team is built. Mark Andrews and Likely, is it Likely?
Likely.
Yeah. He's likely very good, but
he's a dog, bro. I like him a lot.
But it's not like they're built like the greatest show on turf to go up and down easy, quick drives. They're built kind of old school Ravens football, defense, Roquan Smith, and then on offense, and you might win the Super Bowl this season.
Are the Ravens ready to stick with the run if Derrick Henry starts the game, 8 rushes,
Yeah.
17 yards. Because we've seen them back away from it, right?
Right.
Now, again, going back to what you said about run the football, the Ravens have done an excellent over the last 5, 6, 7 years of having multiple backs.
Right.
So if Derrick Henry is 8 rushes in for 17 yards, guess what? You stop the Thunder. Let's see if you can stop the Lightning. Now, Justice Hill, go out there.
Lamar is the light.
Lamar too, yeah.
I was about to say, Lamar is always a little caveat in your back pocket that you can always have, right?
I'm saying
Like,
almost use him like a running back.
You have
these playoff games. Yeah.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
in Lamar's
They do, but
in Lamar's defense too, he said his mom even called him and was like, "Boy, did you forget to use your legs?"
didn't Odell tell him that last in the AFC too?
That is true.
Yeah.
At the same time, too, it goes back to what you already said, Sean. As much as we have had the conversation, is that a quarterback? Is that a quarterback? Is that a quarterback?
Forget all that. You're a quarterback.
So tell him to forget.
Right.
If you want to run for 160 to off win, do it.
And pass for 180 with 2 touchdowns, no picks, that's efficiency. Be efficient. Don't worry about do not make Lamar. You're not built like you have Zay Flowers, he's good, Mark Andrews likely, but you are built to run the damn ball. So run the ball and make it easy on Lamar by running the ball.
And like you said, if you open up the game with running the ball, drag routes all day long. Because you'll have hours just floating right on the back end of that defensive line, and who knows what he can. All he has to do is touch the ball. He'll figure out the rest.
A lot of it in the first round is going to come down to, if like the first game that we played the Steelers, the Ravens earlier in the year, they held them. It was like a real low-scoring Steelers brand of football game. I think it was like 13-10.
I was going to say 13-9. Let me see.
Yeah, something like that. And then obviously a couple of weeks ago, they ran all over us, and we weren't able to play our defensive brand of ball. I think it's going to come down to that, like which style wins. And yeah, I don't know. Based on the last 5 weeks of Steelers games, I'm not very hopeful, I'm going to be honest.
But I still really asked me to put money on. I think the Chiefs will three-peat. I think they're the most underwhelming 15-1 team we've ever seen. But part of that is scared. Well, they're 15-2 now, right? But part of that is because I think they've been playing in third gear. And I think now if they don't have another gear, I suspect Buffalo or Baltimore will knock them off.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw a stat. It was like 5 or 6 teams that hadn't scored more than 35 all year, and 3 of the 4 teams were like 4-13. Then you have the Chiefs. I would have never expected a few years ago if you said their defense would have carried them this far to a 15. That shocks me. They don't have weapons. Like their offense is not loaded with a lot of big skill guys. It's just not.
I feel like they got enough for Reed and Mahomes. Somebody else, it wouldn't be enough. Aging DeAndre Hopkins, aging Travis Kelce, Xavier Worthy. That's enough
Right.
for them.
We were way off. It was 18-16. It was 18-16. So first of all, this is why I don't open my phone during the show. I have a decent amount of breaking news for y'all. Y'all want all of it?
Yeah.
All right. Rex Ryan, we know that he's interviewing for the Jets head coaching job.
It's funny.
I saw he said he was confident he was going to get it.
So that's one of the things that he said. So now that's just interesting to watch in terms of Aaron Rodgers. We're going to get to the NFC now. So unfortunately,
I don't think it was as trash everybody said, by the way.
Huh?
Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying he was particularly good.
Yeah.
But I didn't see horrible.
I'll say this as a lifelong
Still at
fan.
2-to-1 touchdown ratio, right? To interceptions.
As a lifelong Packer fan, we got off the bus at the right time.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
It has no brakes on that bus.
Very true.
I'm
better
better than
find a
Aaron
way to
Rodgers
stop.
apologist, maybe.
He better find a way to stop that. to stop that bus from going downhill. So the second thing, unfortunately, is about my Packers, which we're about to get to in a quick second. As anticipated, Christian Watson, suffered a season-ending knee injury. Down one, Jordan Love, who is also dealing with something, right? Down another target, going into number 2 Philadelphia. But before I move on to that, really, couple change-ups for the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. They just traded Gavin Lux to the Cincinnati Reds. So something to pay attention to.
They still have all those other guys, right?
They just signed
Literally everybody.
Yeah,
They signed
so
the KBO star this week too. So.
Exactly. The Dodgers are retooling with more firepower. So
they're trading for Jimmy Butler, right?
They might as well at this point, and they might win again. But let's look at the NFC really quick for a brief second before we get Sean out of here. Obviously, you're more than welcome to stay if you want to go ahead and kick it with us. We got Vegas Golden Knights after this. We got the women's Lady Rebels, the women's basketball team on UNLV's campus. We're gonna follow that up with the men's team, and then we'll end just kind of shooting it back and forth about some college football. Really quick, NFC. Top seed Detroit. We already talked about Detroit. Top seed Detroit is sitting back this weekend, watching everybody. Like you guys say, kind of bludgeon themselves this weekend. We got number 2 Philly against my number 7 Green Bay Packers. We got a number 3 seeded Washington team against number 6 Tampa, and then we have the LA Rams against a 14-2. 14-3. Once again, 14-3 5th seeded Minnesota Vikings team. I'm gonna be honest. I'll start this one. I'm gonna go Rams in Minnesota. First of all, I'm not sure the last time, and I'll give the NFC North a round of applause. I'm not sure the last time we've seen a division this incredible from top to bottom. Somebody actually did a stat when Green Bay went to Detroit, or when Green Bay played Detroit the second time, I think this year. They had a stat that showed Green Bay's losses were to Detroit, Minnesota, and Philly. But those 3 teams all at the time had like 3 combined losses or something crazy like that. And to be that late into a season, no teams has had all of their losses come from a set of teams with that win percentage. And just to was telling somebody else who's a Packer fan, I was like, if you think about everybody that Green Bay lost to, they're going to playoffs. So from the outside looking in, aside from that Chicago debacle, right? Aside from that, from the outside looking in, you looked at Green Bay, and every game you were leaving like, well, I don't know. If they play them again, maybe Green Bay ekes it out, right? So I say all of that to say Philadelphia and Green Bay is going to be one thing. I think the injuries kind of take it off the table for me. But let's talk about this LA Rams and Minnesota game, only because Minnesota is Minnesota, right? You don't win games in the football season and it be a fluke. However, you're going to LA. Some people may feel like it doesn't matter. I talk about time zones a lot. You're going to LA.
Emotional letdown, like I don't know which words we're allowed to say.
This is the internet, so technically you can. This is it can be real bad.
To go from we might get the number 1 seed in the bye week to no home game at the worst. We have to go on the road. We have the same fate as the Broncos.
I saw so much discussion about how the NFL should take a page out of the NBA's book and just see based on record and abandon divisions for this reason. It's so shitty to go. What did they go? 14-3. 14-3, and you end up as a 5 seed and have to play the Rams instead of, like you said, a very beat up Packers team.
Relax.
But how is this a reward?
The NFL adds the game and removes the 2nd seed bye week. Savage.
Yeah.
Hey man, the funny thing is, I'm so happy that you guys went that route, because that's exactly why I highlighted the game. Playoff time, Sean McVay. I told my dad I'm not playing against, just because I feel like he has. Let's say his playbook is this. I feel like playoff time rolls around, he has a separate one that's like that. Mm-hmm. Sean McVay in the postseason, I'm not willing to bet against. Cool. Again, I done told you guys 5 times during this episode, I grew up a Packer fan. Not many times I had to worry about the division. We're fine. Ask my dad how many times I was worried about Detroit games. He was like, why? Because there's a guy named Matthew Stafford over there that can sling the hell out of that football. Matthew Stafford will be able to throw the football at least 70. As long as Sean McVay is on the sideline and Matthew Stafford is playing quarterback, my vote is for the Rams.
I think Minnesota will get past LA, but I don't think they despite no matter how many games they put together, I think a lot of people still feel like it's Sam Darnold, and they're definitely better than they were 2 years ago when they had all those 1-score wins.
Yeah.
They got like 10-1, and they're definitely better than that team. But I still think nobody's afraid of the Vikings, no matter how many games they won. You know, I think
if they win this weekend,
no. I still think whoever sees them in round 2 isn't afraid of them, and it'll be Detroit. Detroit will see them again in round 2,
and maybe it's unwarranted, but that feeling.
Well, that's helped them. Yeah. That's part of why I think they've caught teams sleeping on them.
Yeah.
And then, like it's helped them, but now it's the playoffs and nobody's sleeping.
Right.
Yeah,
every game's your last. Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
I would also put the Vikings there. I think my game that I'm really looking forward to is the Bucks Commanders game.
Okay.
That one's going to be fun. I think Jaden's one of my favorite rookies in a long time. I'm excited to see if he hits that proverbial rookie wall or not. I think there's a good chance he doesn't. I would pick the Commanders in this one, honestly. The Bucks have been obviously a really good team. Baker has had his resurgence.
How about that, right? Round of applause for Baker.
Things ain't going too good for Skip Bayless right now, but he was
They ain't going good for Fox Sports 1 as a whole.
Yeah, no, it's not. As a whole staff, record label, and as a crew. But Fendi. But Skip Bayless, he swore up and down. I remember Shannon Sharp had a great one-liner. He's like, he can play. And he's like, what is he, in a band? Does he have a guitar or something? What can he play?
Well, no, it's funny, too, because, when he was a rookie, Baker broke the passing touchdown record as a rookie and had, a similar year to what Jaden's having this year. And now, so for him to have the resurgence and be facing Jaden, I think that's going to be a really fun matchup.
I think what you got to award Baker if he gets out of round one is the insurance commercials again.
You have to.
And they have to have them at the big pirate ship.
Well, they dropped Aaron, so you might as well. You might as well go get him now.
You can make so many good storylines out of for insurance, out of him coming. I don't know. I'm seeing it in my head.
Yes.
Yeah. Sean, by default, brother, you have drawn Philly and Green Bay. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Before you break this game down.
I mean, the Packers should have beat the Niners.
I don't want to talk about this.
I was there.
I don't want to talk about this.
Should have beat them.
I don't want to talk about this.
And the Lions.
I don't want to talk about this.
But you know what the 49ers had last season?
What?
That the Detroit Lions have this season?
What?
The kids call it aura. And I feel like a banged up Detroit squad who might get Hutchinson. Go ahead.
Eagles, you mean?
Say it.
Talking about?
Oh, the Eagles Packers. Right. I was just digressing.
Talk about
that I just think normally I'd pick on paper the Eagles right now are healthier. It kind of should beat the Lions. But it just feels like it's like the Eagles when they won in 2017. It's their year to at least make the game, at least make the bowl. And but anyway, I think the Eagles will beat the Packers. And I think they just have a better roster. I think the Packers, they got one of those whiz kids, LaFleur, like McVay.
Yeah.
And he's a really good coach, and Jordan Love's a really good quarterback. And Josh Jacobs has been great. At the end of the day, their cupboards aren't stuffed with talent as the Philadelphia Eagles, who are playing at home, who got this close 2 years ago. And I think the Eagles win. And I think the Eagles, again, on paper, with as banged up as Detroit is, should be the team that comes out of NFC, but this just feels like Detroit's year to make the Super Bowl.
So, first of all, that was beautiful. But, for me, I remember week 1 in Brazil, right? Ugly game. Philly ends up pulling away. But I remember watching that game, and I came away from it. Everybody knows the Cam Newton meme, right? I was sitting there, I watched the game, I came away, and I was like, that's fine. Let us see them again. Sad part is, we're not healthy. And that's just what it boils down to. That's what I was kind of saying a second ago. Whatever chance I thought Green Bay had, it's gone. Obviously you want to be respectful.
They compete.
Right. You want to be respectful, but I think the only reason why they're going to compete is because I think Josh Jacobs touches the ball 30 plus times. And I think he has one of those games. If we have any shot of even being in swinging distance of this team, I'm talking 8 points or less, I was starting to say 10. Let's just say 2 possessions. Let's just leave it at 2 possessions, right? If we even are within 2 possessions at the end of the game, it's because of Josh Jacobs. And I think because of that, he has one of those days. He touched the ball 30 plus times. There was a time earlier this season, it was only 4 or 5 weeks ago, where Josh touched the ball 11 times, I think, in the first quarter. I was at the bar, and I said Green Bay is going to run his knees into the ground. Why do I think they're going to stop him now? A couple of years ago, I said the Mountain West, in terms of Mountain West football, was
here's where I will depart.
Oh no! This
Not
isn't
in
it.
my
This
head.
isn't it
Oh,
just
no,
yet.
okay,
This isn't
go
just
ahead.
yet.
Yeah.
But when I was talking about it, I was like, the Mountain West is a cluster right now. Everybody's knocking off everybody. Everybody's knocking off everybody. We were at UNLV at the time. I laughed and I made a joke. I said it would be hilarious if we did all this arguing all season long for the Mountain West Championship to be Boise State and Fresno State. Lo and behold, the Mountain West Championship was Boise State and Fresno State. We did all of this for nothing. We just did all of that. Kansas City to win a third straight ring, didn't
Yeah. Good job, NFL, like not putting him in the Pro Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, just to give him that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually
Extra chip.
the greatest player in the league. I might become the greatest quarterback and player that ever played. But go ahead, don't put me in the Pro Bowl, even though we have the best record in football, and go ahead, media, like don't acknowledge that we're trying to become the first three-peat team ever. Just pretend it's not actually the biggest story in football. Don't even mention it. Like I feel like the Raiders have gotten more national
they?
headlines
They have.
than the two-time defending champ, face of the NFL, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So
As if
Remember-
we need more motivation, right?
And
Yeah.
even when the Raiders lost in Kansas City, remember what they said? Everybody, we just like we did it earlier. Did the Raiders fumble that game? Like, did the Raiders fumble? We pulled out another one. And y'all said, did the Raiders fumble? That's their 7th straight loss. Maybe we actually won the game. But again, I think it's our fault when, 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, when Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are at Disney World, it's our fault.
or they're running on fumes and they'll get knocked out in the divisional round by a Buffalo or a Baltimore, or there's a reason why they got the point differential of attendance 9 and 7.
Yeah.
Maybe that gets exposed, but I get the hunch it's a veteran team keeping it in third gear, like the Lakers used to do with Kobe and Shaq sometimes in the third title, second title. And then once the postseason comes, they go from the 56-26 Lakers to the 15-1 Lakers.
It's just like when LeBron and his Cavs were third in the East, right? And they were like, "Oh, your Pacers are better than them. Oh, Toronto's the top team
Right,
in the
the
league."
Pacers number 1 seed, right?
LeBron's going to the finals. I just want y'all to know that. I don't care. Oh, you guys look great, Paul George. He's going back to the finals, guys.
But Mahomes, this isn't the LeBron East with the Raptors,
Right.
and he's got to go through Lamar and Josh Allen, two guys that are on eye level with him, that are hungry. When we got to cover the Chiefs the Super Bowl, this team is like, I came away, the Chiefs are going to beat the 49ers because they're winners. They know that's a cliche in sports, but I actually got to taste it, like seeing them up close. They know how to close, and they know, and that's something the Chiefs and the Ravens are going to have to prove to them. You have to show us, like that's how they are, you know. So.
And the funny thing is, just in terms of feel, right? Football, a lot of football is feel. Coming into this season, I was like, "Hey, Josh Allen has to prove it to me." Like he just, like you said, are you going to win one or not?
Josh and Lamar.
Are you going to win one or not? To see Josh Allen win games where he's rushing for 63 yards but throwing for 167, those scare me more than any. Because we watched Josh a little closer when he was here in Wyoming, right? And shout out to Mike Hughes who played against him. I was like, did you know that he would be like this? And he was like, fam, no. Like the way that he improves from year to year to year should be studied. Like the boy is good. That was the biggest difference in his game I saw this year. Oh, he's realizing what Lamar probably should realize in the postseason. Oh, he's cool with throwing for 140, a touchdown, no interceptions. They won.
That's what Mahomes learned. He doesn't need to be the guy that throws 50 touchdowns anymore. Yeah, that's if Lamar and Josh incorporate that into what they're doing. Yeah, that makes it that much harder to beat. Just learn how to win at any cost.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So to be honest, guys, I knew this was going to happen. I wanted to do it. We went a little bit over in terms of football talk. I wanted to do it anyway, but we talked a little Raiders. We talked about the NFL playoff as well. Sean, I'll let you go ahead and get out of here now because you got somewhere to run. But before we do so, got UNLV basketball on the ledger after you leave, men and women. The college football playoff, which I know you're not too involved in, and then the Vegas Golden Knights. And then obviously we have the fight game that you know so
you got
well.
any fight game for me?
I was about to say before you get out of here,
Yeah.
you decide which one to talk about. So where are we going?
Because we talked about Benavidez, Morrell,
Mhm.
Canelo Crawford. Looks like it might actually happen in May. All right, Canelo Crawford. I don't be surprised, man. I'm fun at parties. Be surprised if you get a anticlimactic big money fight, which unfortunately has happened. Mayweather Pacquiao, even De La Hoya Trinidad when they were in their primes. Sometimes in boxing, you get these anticlimactic big money fights. And I think that Canelo wins that fight if it happens by decision. The guy gets dropped. I think Crawford's got a shot to keep the fight in the center of the ring. He actually has longer arms than Canelo. He's Terence Crawford. Like, you can't count him out. And I think Crawford's more motivated for the fight than Canelo. I think Canelo looks at it like, I didn't feel like fighting Benavidez. This is the other fight that could get me the type of money the Benavidez fight would do.
I hate to be the guy because your breakdowns are perfect. But if a question comes to mind, I'm gonna try to throw it to you.
Yeah.
Do you think Canelo can be motivated? Period. Because we had the conversation about him not necessarily wanting the Benavidez fight. If that's the case, why are we still fighting?
That's great. He took a cold. So the first day of New Year's, I stayed in Boulder City to see my wife's family.
Shout out to Sam.
Shout out to Samantha. And we were in this little old motel where the hot water didn't work, but I had to take a shower I had stuff to do. So I had to take this shower. The water was coming on hard.
I'm gonna say that's some cold pipes.
I was like, oh, this sucks. And I was like, I'm Russian, man. It's nothing. Like trying to, convince myself. What I was really thinking was, damn, how does Canelo still get into those ice baths up in Tahoe, up in Big Bear, wherever he's training at? I said, man, I don't got $1 million. He has like $300 million, and he still gets into that cold tub in freezing weather, takes it like a man, trains, puts his rounds in. So to answer your question about, I think he's on autopilot motivated. Like, this is just what I do. Like, I eat right. I put my rounds in. I love beating motherfuckers up. I love boxing. And I'm always going to fight good opposition. For whatever reason, he didn't want to do the Benavidez fight. I think part of it is because I think Benavidez was that fight. But to answer your question, I think his modus operandi, his MO, is to just be, he's a professional, right? Like, that's just what he does. I don't think the Crawford fight brings that little extra out of him. And I think the way he needs to look at that fight to bring that extra motivation out of him, this is your redemption for Floyd Mayweather. The last time you fought an undefeated pound-for-pound king, who was a little guy, by the way, too. Like Floyd Mayweather is as big as Terence Crawford. They're both 5'8", and both were lightweights that moved up to welterweight, and then junior middleweight became pound-for-pound king. This is a chance to right that wrong. Now it's on. When you fought Floyd, it was on his terms. He was 36, but he was still Floyd, and you were just becoming Canelo.
Caught you on an upswing.
And he got you at 152, 2 pounds below the weight. You didn't peak until 160 and 168. This is in your weight class now. It's on your terms, so right that wrong. He asked for it. It's not like you went picking on the little guy. The little guy wanted to smoke with you. If you go in there on this autopilot, like you did for Berlanga and Munguia, you might be playing with fire with Terence Crawford. Even though he's 37, even though he's smaller, he's Terence fucking Crawford. He might beat you. And this one, there is no rationalizations of, well, I was 23, I was young. And no. You're fighting him at your weight. Even though you've had more fights than Crawford, more wear and tear a little bit on your body, Crawford's older than you. 37, you're 34. You're the bigger man. You ducked Benavidez. You gotta beat Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford loses. I dare to be great. Got this huge payday. I'm not 168 pounder. Right. So I do expect Crawford. He's human, no matter how much of a savage he is, and he is a savage. He enjoys inflicting punishment. Brilliant fighter, IQ wise. but human.
And get caught before.
If he gets touched, I think even the blows connected on the arms is going to make his nervous system go, what is that? I haven't felt that before. And once that nervous system starts to react like that, that great IQ you have, that other voice in your head is getting in the way. The great IQ is saying, do this, pivot off this angle, and the head's going, and the nervous is going, ow, 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 ow. And so what that makes you do is like Jermell Charlo, like Berlanga did, you retreat, you give ground, and that lets
That's the
Canelo
last thing you want to do.
come forward and be in control of the fight. And I still so I think Crawford is going to touch him up. He's going to have moments where he does his Terrence Crawford stuff, but his legs are not only 37 years old. It didn't matter against Errol Spence because his counterpunch was so great.
Yeah.
He could just he did a lot of catch and shooting against Errol Spence. Catch, bait. He's going to be trying to catch against his hand's going to get knocked into his eye because it's more force on the shot. Canelo still fights at a slow pace,
Which is why I have this question.
yeah.
And hopefully,
Sorry for
this.
No, it's
No, it's perfectly fine. I wanted to give you something to kind of piggyback off of, and then Kevin will probably decide if he has a question for you. But the last one for me was I did want to analyze it from Bud's vantage point for a quick second. One of the things that I told you I love about Bud was the way how he's the first fighter to me that you can watch him computing. Floyd was almost a technician to where it's almost like, does he have him figured out or not? Oh, okay, he got it figured out. You can watch, but it's almost like Bud is like, he can't hide it, right? I remember watching that Kell Brook fight. And first, we talked about it. First 5.5 minutes, I was like, he looks like he's stunned. Like he looks like he doesn't know what to do. And you even said it.
Fight.
You were like, he'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that fight, and there was a moment in that toward the end of that second round where I said, that might have been it. And early in the third round, I said, there it is. I said, he hasn't figured out. Can Terrence Crawford take that time to figure it out? Because if I'm Canelo, guess what I'm not giving you the opportunity to do? Oh, which is figure it out. I'm walking you down as soon as this is. You already said it. I'm the younger man. I'm walking you down from the moment that this bell rings.
I think Crawford can figure out Canelo, but I think Crawford might be underestimating Canelo just a little bit. And if not Crawford, the people who believe he will beat Canelo. And I think what might surprise Terrence Crawford a little bit is the speed of Canelo, not just with his hands, but with his quick. When Canelo's on point, and he does need that head movement didn't show up against Berlanga. He was kind of just walking in straight, but he knows he's gonna turn it up a notch for Crawford.
Caleb Planet showed up.
I think what's gonna be an issue for Crawford in this fight is this dude's hard to hit. He's coming on TV. Okay, he's a come forward Mexican fighter. You get in there, you're like, oh man, this dude's quick, and then when he gets you in range and lets his hands go, those punches come out quicker than you thought. And so it's like I knew he was powerful, I knew he was smart and experienced. I didn't know he was this nice. I didn't know like his.
So do you think?
Yeah.
Kevin, this is yours. I promise. Do you think that Bud, since he be underestimated Canelo, do you think that what he expected?
I think more so
from
the people
Errol
backing him than him.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, if let's just say, because obviously he talked about the Errol Spence fight for years, wanting that fight, and he finally gets it, and then it was what it was, right?
Masterpiece.
Do you think because of that, what the expectation that he was expecting from the Errol fight, in terms of, with all due to Errol, just that level of competitiveness, that back and forth, that match in wits that he didn't get in that fight, do you think that he's expecting it from this fight? And if so, does he ultimately get it?
Does he get that
Matching
high-speed
of
chess match?
Yeah.
And I think he does. And that's part of what I mean by might get a little bit of an anticlimactic big money fight, because both guys are still in their prime, but not in their peak. Their best day is behind both of them, but they're still really good. They're still two of the top 5 fighters, if not top 10 in Canelo's case, in the world pound for pound. So I think you'll definitely get that chess and that high speed chess. The public will be wanting a little bit more of a war, a little bit more action. And I think you're good. I think if you're a purist, you're going to enjoy what high a level this is fought at. But these guys are human, and they can only be so hungry. Like Morales and Barrera. I remember George Foreman had a great quote about their rematch. Their first fight, they killed each other. Second fight was a boxing match. And George Foreman said, fight number 1 is when we were hungry. Fight number 2 is now we're millionaires. And I think you're going to get a little bit of that. And you may see Terrence Crawford, who you never thought you'd see, make a little bit of a business decision. You'll see him try to win, but not try to win at the expense of risk getting knocked out. And so I think Canelo wins, 115, 113, 116, 112, a competitive scrap, a high-level boxing match. But the public who's thinking this is the ultimate fantasy fight, they're going to be left wanting a little bit more. That's what I think is going to happen.
So if that doesn't happen, I know Canelo's already got, like you said, all the money. He's already got his legacy. He's only 35. He's not old, but
right.
He's on autopilot mode to the point where he's just training and doing everything like he's done.
Like LeBron right now,
right? If he does lose this one, do you think how much longer do you think he fights for? Or is that too tough to tell? You think?
Well, it's his benefit too. He's the guy who's talked about fighting for 5 more years. Mm-hmm. Crawford's the guy who's been talking more and more about retirement, and I think he does look at this fight as a jackpot financially and legacy-wise. Like, if I win this one, I'm there with Ali and Floyd Mayweather and Sugar Ray Robinson and all that. And so for Canelo, if he loses, where do you go from here?
I think he might still have legacy hungry or something if he loses this one.
Canelo?
Because it wasn't that
No, I think that if he loses to Crawford, it concludes his prime. It concludes his prime. Canelo's prime. It concludes his prime. Canelo could always fight and draw a crowd.
Right.
It concludes his prime. Canelo could always fight and draw a crowd of love, supportive Mexican fans. But if he loses to Crawford, it concludes his prime. It concludes his prime. And so if Crawford wins, it puts him up there with everybody. He'll have done it all. Beautiful. Not even cherry on top. This being undisputed at 140 and 147, champion from 135 to 68, beats Canelo.
Yeah.
So this is, but if he beats Canelo, Canelo's prime is concluded. I would have rather have seen Crawford right after he beat Spence defend the undisputed title against Boots Ennis. I would have rather have seen Canelo give Benavidez the fight he deserved.
I wanted that one so bad.
But they're going to cash out against each other, maybe.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We'll take it.
Yeah. We'll take it.
You got more?
Sean? Very insightful, I must say.
Appreciate it, guys.
I appreciate you as always, Sean. You're a legend in this game, brother. Let's definitely do this more often.
Yes.
Kev and I, we got other topics to mainly talk about.
I'm gonna let the professionals work.
Round of applause again for Sean Zettel. Sean, say the family for me, man. My guy, too. Of course,
love you, bro.
More, man.
Thanks,
you take care, brother.
Thanks,
always,
guys.
always.
I'm gonna tune in during my workout for the rest.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Peace out.
Yes, sir. Again, round of applause for Sean Zettel, guys. A boxing aficionado, if you guys haven't been able to tell. So we got Vegas Golden Knights to talk about. We got Lady Rebels, Running Rebels, and then just kind of shooting about some college football. But going back to the Knights, 3-1 victory over Buffalo. There's a couple of different ways that I could tackle this one, but this team was 2 minutes and 18 seconds away from a shutout. And that's all that I keep thinking. That's all that is on my brain.
Y'all
want to say, you can go ahead and piggyback off of that a little bit.
No, this is just real quick. My dad is a Sabres fan.
Okay.
So it's nice to get that one over on him. He was obviously watching the game.
So for those of you who don't know, I told you guys already, I saw Kevin Kelly earlier this week, and I'm trying to figure out where I saw him at. I saw him at the Knights game. So you want to go ahead and detail everybody, or just let everybody know kind of what you've been doing with the Knights?
Yeah, I do communications with the Knights. I'm on the game day staff there. So
my God.
Working with Terrell real close. And it's been an amazing experience working with the players and coaches and everyone in the front office and everything. So it's been great.
So I know Will Desperate has told you a little bit about the show. I know you've listened to the show. This is your first time actually being on the show. We have this list, right? This little leaderboard.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure I told Bruce about it maybe once. We have this leaderboard on who we believe in terms of head coaches are telling us the truth. And Bruce is always at the top.
Yeah. We always talk about it too amongst our group. Like it's really like a blessing being able to work at this stage for him, because you see, you can watch other press conferences around the league, and when we record audio for other coaches, you see that a lot of them are closed off, and you get it. Like, that's the nature of the sports business. You can't always disclose everything that you want to and stuff like that. But that said, like, Bruce is so candid and so honest, and so being a part of those press conferences is great. And I agree, he's at the top of that list. I think AP is up there too, right?
Yeah, no, you know what's funny? I think AP moved up to look at me after this morning. Yeah, this morning I think he definitely was like, and I told you guys too, if the Raiders did let go of AP, I don't think AP is one of those like air the dirty laundry type of guys, but I think we would hear his side of the story.
I mean, especially if it was something that was like loose ends that he'd have to tie on his end to make sure that like, his career is going forward. I'm sure you'd hear that side of it.
Like the Gardner Minshew thing. Why'd you start Gardner Minshew? Right. I didn't want to. Plain and simple.
And that's not like being, that's not like shady to the Raiders. That's just keeping your clear on your end,
And at the same time, too, I've always been a firm believer of you can't get mad at me for telling the truth.
No.
Why'd you start Gardner? I didn't want to.
Right.
I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But just to go back to this point really quick, the leaderboard for us, usually top two. Becky has jumped into the top two before, but usually it's Lindy LaRock or Bruce.
Oh, really?
Those are usually the two that we can pretty much be sure that they're going to tell us the truth.
I don't have that much experience listening to Lindy, so I'm not sure how transparent she is. She's up there.
You want to change it? You want to change it? As a matter of fact, when we get to the Lady Rebel thing, you guys, or Lady Rebel segment, you guys actually hear me. But the Lady Rebels have a big game on Wednesday, and I'll be in the bar.
Yeah.
So if you want to go cover that game,
yeah, I'll go for sure.
Have at it. But yeah, man. So, 2 minutes 18 seconds away from a shutout in this one. I'm interested to see. I wanted to get out to a morning skate this week. I have this Colasar story I want to do, but anyway, I'd be interested to know from Bruce how he one of those Calgary shutouts. I feel like he'll bring up, and I think there was a game against the Kings, a 3-1 victory against the Kings earlier this year in October. But I would love to know, and obviously you've been around the team all year long, I would love to know from your standpoint and from Bruce's standpoint, if this game against the Buffalo Sabres was the best overall defensive and obviously goalie play game, because we've seen shutouts from this team, right? Yeah. But again, they were 2 minutes and 18 seconds away from a shutout. But shout out to Markel Collins, who did the Buffalo story. I was texting him at the game, and I lied. He texted me at the game and said this might be their best defensive performance. Mm-hmm. And then I texted him right after and said, "Dog, they had 4 shots in the second period.
Yeah,
they had 5 in the first."
Yeah, I think it was, and a lot of the talk after the game was about how the defense has been on offense. When you talk about like the blue line scoring, in the league for that stat, but yeah, I think the only thing, I think that it was an insane performance. You saw Eichel get one against his old team, but
always fun, right?
Yeah, but I agree. The defense, I think that was their most consistent, at least, performance throughout 3 periods. Because there's been a lot of games where it's they're really strong for 2 periods, but there's like a little bit letdown for a few minutes. But to hold it all together and come 2 minutes away from the shutout, but tough one.
And you couple that with, well, you mentioned Eichel a second ago, right? But you couple that with, and this is just the energy, obviously. DeBoer, when he came in a couple of years ago, and he told Kelly directly, like, again, going back to the AP point, right? If this is my team and you want me to run it a certain way, I don't know how to run a hockey team without a captain. Mm-hmm. So we got to know one. And the funny thing is, but we talk about these different sports and the different energies that come with these different sports. When your captain is having one of those games, everybody else usually follows suit, right?
Yeah.
Mark Stone, once I realized that was his 600th point, I texted Markel and was like, they're not losing tonight. That's just not written in the cards.
Yeah, he really does set the tone. He scored on the deflection, I think, from Jack. But, when he's going, the team just functions behind him so well. It's obvious. Like I don't know if there's like a more core of the team captain in the entire NHL. Like he really does hold that flag for sure.
And obviously, it ended up being a victory for Vegas, but they improved 27-9-3 on the season, good for 57 points. Winnipeg had lost earlier in the night, so that meant the night moved into the position for the best record in the league. It currently stands today. They are +6 on LA and Edmonton, with a road game looming tomorrow. They will be in San Jose for a date with the Sharks. It's their third meeting against the Sharks this season. They've already beaten them twice. 7:30 puck drop from the SAP Center. You want to give us anything on what you expect from that game?
I think that no matter where they are in the standings, that one is always one is tough for us. So, no, not a whole lot there, but I think it'll be a fun one for sure.
Let's do it, man. We have, first of all, again, guys, if you guys are watching via YouTube Live, we appreciate you. If you would like to, and you are listening to the audio version of this, all you have to do for YouTube, go to the search bar, type in Talk That Talk Radio Show, and everything is there for your viewing pleasure. So I guess two serious topics to get to, just in terms of UNLV basketball. Let's start with the women really quick. The women on the road at Boise State kept their win streak alive. They improved their win streak to 4 straight wins. They had to do it in the form of a slugfest. Both teams shot under 30%. I think the Lady Rebels shot 34%. It was an ugly game. I talked to Lindy this season about having to reinvent yourself.
I was going to say,
talk to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I guess, if you've probably gotten them for talk a lot and them more than I have. What has been like the biggest adjustment after losing the Mountain West Player of the Year?
To be honest, this is so funny. I've credited this program with the ability to duplicate talent. And the funny thing is because I'll give you a small little snapshot. Justice Etheridge a couple of seasons ago. I look at Amarachi Kimpson and I see Justice with a jump shot, with a better jump shot, right? I look at Kiera Jackson on the roster right now, and I look at Tegan Colvin, and I look at the way that they're prepping her to take over the reins when Kiera leaves. I look at Nika Obiazer, right, who's over at Grand Canyon now.
Yeah.
And while Alyssa was here, right, when Nika was here, Alyssa has expanded her game now. Now she's coming and taking those trail threes for this offense. She's going out and guaranteeing you somewhere between 8 and 11 boards a game. Now let's get to Desi, right? I was sitting back waiting to see, well, how do you guys replace Desi? They replaced Desi in 3 different ways, and
spread it out a little.
And that's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah.
When you lose one of your best players in program history, one of the best players that has ever graced this campus, regardless of sport, in terms of Ray Young, you're not going to replace her with one person. So I look at somebody like McKenna Brackens, right, and that's your post score. That's your go-to. I look at somebody like a Meadow Roller, who's a redshirt freshman, and this is the funny thing. There were times that Desi would come down, and I'm sure you've seen it. There's been times where Desi would come down, and she's almost Gerald Wallace-esque, out of control. And it's like, dog, what are you doing? And it ends up in 2 points. I watch Meadow play sometimes, and she's a redshirt freshman. So there's a little bit of, like, recklessness to her.
Yeah, the bull in China.
And I'm like, this is kind of what we need, bro. Like, we need her to be reckless. And Lindy will tell you, too, Meadow leads them in rebounding. I believe Meadow had 12 and 6 in the last game, and she played 18 minutes. That's the way they've replaced Desi. They've taken a little bit of Alyssa, asked her to do more. They've taken a little bit of Kenna, allowed her to do more, and then they just let Meadow go free.
And then obviously bringing in Aaliyah.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Shot 44% from 3. She was at Eastern Washington.
Yeah, Eastern Washington. Coming in, another upperclassman.
That's obviously a big deal for them too. But yeah, I mean, just to lose Desiree's production like that from last year, it's amazing that they're still competing as well following it. So. And
then Desi had a lot of battles with Elodie a lot from Boise State. And I'm not gonna lie, if I'm Elodie, if I'm Boise, and I saw UNLV's coming in, Desi's not here, bet
Yeah.
Exactly what I expected them to do is what they did. Elodie was in the paint a lot, bumping a lot, and she was successful a lot, right? More often than not. I had the conversation with Lindy after the game. We were on the phone, and I was like, so most coaches will tell you when it's a lot of meat in the paint, and obviously rebounds are going to be far and few for either side. There's one way to ensure that you get more chances, and it's energy and effort. Not pointing to the offensive rebounds. And she said that's exactly what it was. Like tonight, we had to beat them to the spot. And if we didn't get the ball. Like she said, 50-50 balls for us today was pretty good. We were after majority of them went in our favor. And then she followed it up by saying, and again, I'm not trying to cancel out what's happening on Wednesday, rather, because on Wednesday, now you guys just heard it, Kevin Kelly will be in the building for first place, UNLV, Colorado State, huge game, right?
Yeah.
Biggest game in the Mountain West slate so far. And pardon, and you'll be there to recap a winner. But before I do that, I talked to Lindy and I was like, well, I'm not trying to look past Wednesday, but you go to the pit after that. So you had a San Jose trip, you got a Boise trip, you got a pit stop home game, and then you're back at the pit. And for the past 2 or 3 seasons, I've asked Lindy why. Go back and look at that middle of December, I think the week of Christmas, that road trip. It took him to Texas, and it took him the states of Texas and Illinois. They played Northwestern, DePaul, and Baylor, right? Mm-hmm. And I asked the past 2 seasons, I asked Lindy, like, why? Why did you? That's a murderer's row. Why would you do that? And like she said, if we want to go where we want to go in March and hopefully April, we got to see these teams. So it's better for us to see them in December than to see them for the first time in March. So I asked Lindy about the pit stop home game, or excuse me, about the ironically enough, the stop at the pit before this or after this pit stop home game. And I was like, how do you focus on what's at hand? But technically, you're still in the middle of a stretch where you're going on the road 3 times in the next 4 games. And she highlighted December.
It's a great point, and I think it's a downfall and a bad philosophy of a lot of coaches that schedule easy, comfortable preseasons where they're not traveling anywhere. And that's the travel part, especially, has become so huge where no team wants to travel for their preseason if you're like a big enough program. Mm-hmm. And that's just so detrimental. I'm not planning those tough games that are going to challenge you. Like, I look back to last year's UNLV out of conference schedule. They played like a D2 team on December 28th, I think. Why are we doing that? Like,
did you figure out an answer for why we're doing
it? I definitely did not.
I didn't figure that either.
But like, just the taking your preseason or pre-conference season serious and scheduling those types of opponents is so key, and sets them up for, again, facing the second toughest team in the league.
And you kind of just talked about it right now, right? Again, you're going through the schedule right now, but while I highlighted that December schedule, Arizona, it was a road trip game in there. Oklahoma, top 10, Oklahoma came here.
Yeah.
And I asked Lindy after that Oklahoma game, I was like, at a certain point, do you just got to scheduling these like until you guys are familiar with it? And she said, yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what you said about scheduling. Lindy is not backing off. I'm not changing my philosophy. So we just gonna have to keep seeing these teams.
You don't gain anything out of looking good in a 30-point win against a non-competitive team. You do gain something out of a 10-point loss on the road against an opponent that's going to build you for these tough, January dog day stretches against tough conference teams. And that's key. And I think that's something the men's team has missed.
That's a perfect segue into the men's team, right? The women's team sits with 11-4 overall record, and of course they're playing for first place. But the men's side are on a 4-game win streak as well. They're sitting at 9-5 on the year. They had a 79-73 victory over San Jose in their last outing. Now UNLV has had a perfect 3-0 start to conference play, and before the conference schedule started. Hopefully nobody looks like I'm crazy, but I compared this team to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the NBA. The reason why I did that is because I watched that game on Christmas Day, and I looked at Minnesota and I said, I just don't know if I'm watching a good team.
Yeah.
I'm just watching a team that's just there.
Right.
I watch UNLV basketball sometimes, and I go, I don't know if I'm watching a good team.
I think I'm not sure that either of those teams have an identity, and that's you have to have an identity, especially you see with the Timberwolves, like talking so much about how he doesn't always know what his role is on a day-to-day basis, and he's being doubled and forced to give it up, and they don't have looks where he can get to his own shot. Where with UNLV, it's like sometimes D-Don is really controlling the offense and doing what he needs to. Yeah, and having like 17.8 assist games and like running the offense. And then there's others where they don't even go to him or trust him much to run the offense, and it's more just like trying to find a decent contested look from deep, which is just not good offense.
And the funny thing is, you talked about it before we even started. Excuse me. The pre-show conversations, because obviously working in this field, you always know how a person feels without a mic in their face, and then you know how a person feels with the mic in their face. And the funny thing is, because of the field that we work in, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, what we say off air gets said on air. Maybe the words are a little different sometimes, but one of the things that you said before the show, and I thought it was brilliant. You said, when I watch this team, it's usually not the whole game. It's like 5 or 6 minutes where I'm looking at the team and I'm just like, what the hell? Like, what does that look like? San Jose State went on a 14-0 run in that second half, and it made me go, oh, that's what Kevin's talking about.
And those are the things that, they played good for 75% of the game. And it's something that if you look at the box score, you couldn't tell at all. I mean,
that's how they lost to Memphis, right? Played good for the first 30, played well for the first 30 minutes.
Yep.
And then didn't.
And it's like, overall, like I said, they're holding teams to really low shooting, and themselves are going out there and flaming, shooting, in the last 2 or 3 games, over 50% from deep. Like, that's tough to beat. But when you give up stretches where you're, like you said, giving up a 14-0 run, it doesn't matter how good you're shooting the ball. Like, you're going to lose a lot of tough games. They're lucky to not be in that stretch where teams have been able to finish those, but it's not going to be that way for the rest of the season, especially in this conference.
And just another number that we were talking about, just to let you guys in behind the scenes a little bit. Kevin and I were talking about turnovers before the show started, and again, UNLV is 3-0 in conference play to start the year. They had 10 turnovers against Fresno State in a game where they came out of the halftime break and went on an 11-2 run, I think, out of the break. Ultimately ended up being a 14-2 run that UNLV had to ultimately pull back away from. That Air Force game, which is the most dominant win of the 3, UNLV committed 17 turnovers. So, just from the outside looking in, at the end of the season, we may look back at this and we may go, Fresno State was a bad team, San Jose State was a bad team, Air Force was a bad team.
Right.
We've seen this team lose to every other good team played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easy to get the recency bias, like you said. Last 4, they've won 5 of the last 6, and not in like bad fashion. They're playing good basketball.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's against some of the bottom tiers in our conference, and these stretches like 14-0 against San Jose.
San Jose.
It's not going to work against a Boise or New Mexico, a Utah State. It's not. They're going to win those ball games if we're even in the chance to be up that much. But
even a down year with San Diego State.
Yeah. Well, they just knocked off Boise, right?
And then before that, Utah State beat them.
Mm.
And Utah State is the best team in the conference to me.
Yeah.
And we'll see if I'm wrong, but I've been saying Utah State all season long. But we know what a Brian Dutcher-led team looks like, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say you have another stretch where you don't score for, let's say, 6 minutes against San Jose State. That's close to 10 minutes against San Diego State. And they're only scoring 6 on the other side. Yeah. So a stretch of a 6-0 run may not seem as bad, but against a Brian Dutcher team, you may be without a point for the last 7.5 minutes.
Yeah. And also, I think that, like, last game they dominated in the paint, 44 points in the paint, but, like, I think that's going to continue to happen, especially, like, Bayer getting in foul trouble. There's not, like, they're not big in the front court at all. They're going to struggle with that.
And they're begging for Rob Whaley to come back, right? Happy birthday to Rob. I think his birthday is today.
Is it?
Yeah, I think I got that notification earlier. Everybody screamed for him to come back, right?
Yeah.
And he's undersized.
And he might not. I mean, there's a real chance that he goes for the purple red shirt, which no one would blame him for
At all.
But like, yeah, and he's not necessarily huge either. He's like a strong dude, but he's not a 6'9", you know.
Absolutely. So, my takeaway, this was after, was this Mississippi State? Maybe this is Mississippi State. My conclusion, as great as D-line is, this team has no shot if Barrett Cherry's not on the floor. Sorry.
Yeah.
Foul trouble, injuries, back, finger, whatever. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not on the floor, whatever, same thing I did with Green Bay. What UNLV does have with him on the floor, slice it in half when he's not on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, especially that he opens up so much. Post hook has been like a signature this year, but they stopped going to it. And it's like the first few games, he was utterly dominant. He was leading the entire NCAA in field goal percentage and on 25 field goal attempts after 2 or 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
And he was clearly like the pinnacle of the offense. And, you know, obviously DJ, you want to be like that 1A in the offense, but the fact that it's moved away from focusing on that main game within the offense, I think is not a good sign going forward. You know, don't get me wrong, Rishwain being like shooting and leading the team, that's good. And Henley obviously providing some like secondary playmaking skills. That's great. We have to have Bear and Didon like dominating and having that like clear role of leading the offense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm not really sure what the ceiling is for this team without that. But you kind of just talked about it a little bit too with Jaden Henley, tied a career high with 6 assists in the last win. In addition to that, I saw Jalen Bedford as well as Kevin Kruger about his role, his move to the bench rather. And I like Kruger's response. We're not like Jalen. Jalen said he gave us athlete jargon a little bit, but I trust them. And if they say this is what they need, I'm comfortable with the group, whatever the case may be. And that was a beautiful answer from him. But Kevin, I feel like gave me a little bit more when I was asking for earlier, right? In terms of his personality, he said he was scared to go have a conversation with him in Arizona. He said it was one of those things where maybe scared wasn't the word, but it was a worry for him.
Yeah.
He said the one thing he didn't want Jalen to do was think that he didn't believe in him. Mm-hmm. And the way that I asked the question, I'm not sure if you're in the newsroom or if you were.
I watched it after.
Okay, I wasn't sure if he was in a room or not. But the question that I'm sure you remember the question, or I'm sure you heard it. The question that I basically asked was about him playing free. I was watching the game against San Jose, and I was like, he's just not thinking.
Right.
The way that I saw him thinking earlier in the year, he's just not thinking. And that's the best thing that I used to tell my middle school is that when I was in basketball, I used to tell them, what do we practice for? Mm-hmm. Like when it comes to game time, Sunday mornings, I don't want to see y'all think. I don't. Like we think in practice.
Yeah.
It should be muscle memory by the time we get to the game.
And I think there's something to be said about that being easier on the second unit. You know, like when you come in as the spark plug, you're expected to put up a lot of shots. You're expected to, you don't have to die your rollout much when you're leading the second unit. And like you said, it was kind of jargon heavy, his answer, but it did seem like very sincere in that, like he was buying into that role and was okay with that role. Like he's averaged 15 over his last 3 games in 19 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's as efficient as you'll find in college. Like, and then obviously Brooklyn has his backcourt duo in the second unit has been elite on defense. And even if it doesn't show up in the steal numbers, his effort and his
fighting over screens,
especially in the second half, it's just been huge to this team in the last 5 games.
I don't know what it is. Something about that number 13 jersey here in Vegas, it just endears yourself to the crowd.
Yeah.
But you kind of talked about it already. 4 straight wins for this program. Let's give him another round of applause. 3rd in the Mountain West currently with 9-5 overall record. They head to Boise next. I think they head to Boise today. They're scheduled to take on the Broncos tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. They beat the Broncos on the road last season in this same spot. I think it was a 4-point victory last year. So again, we'll see how this ends. But talk to me.
Utah State got ranking 25th.
That sounds about right.
It's weird.
What are they right now? They still got that one loss?
2, I thought.
2?
Uh,
Oh, something about Utah State. It's one of those years. You know, remember when Wyoming had that year a couple of years ago with Hunter Maldonado and Graham Ike?
Yeah.
I remember watching that year, and it took me getting on West Championship to look at them in person again and go, huh, they're not that bad. Like Utah State for me all this year, I've been looking at everybody like
it is 1 year, right?
one.
Yeah.
Who's that one to? I forgot who it was. Utah State is incredible.
I know. It's not a school that you often think of.
Yeah.
As being one of them. It was
Oh, okay.
UC San Diego
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
in the middle of December.
Oh my lord, man!
Me neither. I didn't
College
know.
basketball is great.
It is.
College basketball is the
given
greatest
round,
thing ever. Oh my lord, Kevin. Again, I don't know how much you've listened to the show before and things like that, but I just realized I didn't start the show on my mom's tip in. So I'm at my dad's tip in now, and he sent me his. Before I do that, I want to read my mom's really quick. My mom's typically opens the show with something lighthearted, something just some positive. Usually on this Monday, it's some type of motivation. But something that she sent me that I should have opened the show with was a quote that says, "A little progress each day adds up to big results." A little progress each day adds up to big results. I read that twice because you and I had a conversation 3 days ago, maybe 3 or 4 days ago. And all my days are running together. I don't know what today is.
How it goes.
And we were just discussing just possible things in the future.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny how you sit back with an idea all day long, and then you send the text, and then the idea kind of just flushes itself out in front of you. So shout out to my mom for sending me that. A little progress does add to big results.
100%.
Let's get to my dad's tip in, and then we can get out of here. We can talk some college football playoff next show. But I want to see what my dad was talking about to see if it was coming in here. All right, cool. So my dad's is about baseball, and then we can end with some college football playoff and get out of here.
Yeah.
My dad said, "I know it's time for playoff football with the NFL and college, but this guy is the greatest." He said my tip in is about the MLB. What a hell of a lead. All right. As a Dodger fan, I'm still riding high off. If you guys are listening to the audio version, I just shot the camera a very dirty look. As a Dodger fan, I am still riding high off of another world championship that was made even sweeter by beating the hated Yankees. I believe that one of the reasons why I'm still
with him on that one as a Red Sox fan.
Are you?
Yes. I cannot stand the Yankees with all my life.
I have, you know what's funny? I have so many people that are like in my immediate circle that hate the Yankees. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy. I'm from New York too. But
You and Will are an interesting bunch, though.
yeah.
I don't know what you can't write a story better than this. But I believe one of the reasons that I'm still in is because the Dodgers organization did not sit back and bask in glory, but instead they got right to work in an attempt to put this team into a dynasty. I hate that we lost World Series hero Walker Buehler. I told you it was going to happen. To free agency and an overcrowded pitching room. But besides that, the team pretty much stayed intact while making notable additions. Mainly, speaking of two-time Cy Young Award winner Nick Snell, re-signing closing pitcher Blake Shen, and another playoff hero in Tommy Edman, and also adding outfielder Michael Conforto. But aside from all that, what surprised and excited me most, because I thought there was no way the Dodgers could, that we keep the first Dodger to win. Wait, what? Oh, to win the All-Star Game MVP. I'm so sorry. I read this wrong. To win the All-Star Game home run derby. That's what threw me off. Sorry. And also after playing a huge role in this championship, that would be none other than Teoscar Hernandez. He played last year on a single year, $23.5 million deal, but re-signed for 3 years and $66 million. He stated after signing that he could have got additional $5 to $6 million from other teams, but for him, money wasn't the issue. In addition, just like Shohei Ohtani did, Teoscar has agreed to have $23 million of his salary deferred so the team can help by adding a little bit of extra talent around him. I can't wait for spring training so we can run it back. This is what my household is like, by the way. This is what I grew up around.
The thing that jumped to my mind is, do they feel like the mid 2010s Warriors do as much as they do to me? It just feels like that level of a dynasty, at least building towards it. I don't know.
You know what's interesting? And I'm so happy that you asked that. I think I'm ready to say it, whatever. I think that saying the word never is better, right? I don't know that we will ever see a dynasty of that sort in baseball. And I think your best player having a chance to change the game offensively 4 times in a game just lends to so much more of the parity that we see in baseball, right?
Yeah.
I've talked about it before. Nobody in no other league has had more world champions since 2000.
Is it?
Than baseball. You got to think about it. Who's got a title in there? Arizona got a title in there. The Red Sox got a title in there. Several titles in there. When I said, what was the thing I was about to say? The Rangers.
Royals.
They got a title in there. The Royals got a title in there.
Yeah.
Frisco got 3 in there. Like that. Then on top of that, when you think about it, just from 2000 to now, Dodgers got 2.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I feel like the one that to push back, the thing that is makes me believe it is they can just spend as much as they want to build this team. I agree that in basketball it's easier because there's way less factors. There's only 5 guys on the floor, but you also have salary, not a cap, but curtains you can't go over. In baseball,
you do what you want.
Put any roster together that you want, and it looks like they're very willing to spend the firm money to do so. So I agree. I don't know if anyone will reach that comparison, but they do feel like the closest since that to me.
Do we know when's the last time we had back-to-back World Series champions?
Oof. I can't even. I don't know.
Because even when the Giants won their 3, they won 3 and 5.
Yeah, it was always every other year.
And it was all even years too.
I don't know if it's happened in my lifetime.
I don't think it has. Has it?
Maybe the Yankees 01, 02.
Who won in 99?
The Yankees won 3 in those or 2 or 3 in those 99 to 02. I don't know.
Okay, that's somewhere in there because I know Arizona's title was early. I know the Angels title was 2002. Arizona's title I want to say is 2001.
Because the Sox made a deal after that. Then I don't remember that. But
right.
I remember, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that the Yankees is the answer there.
I think
late
is.
90s.
Yeah.
So to answer your question in that regard, I do think this iteration of the Dodgers could be the next team to win back-to-back.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm really happy that Markel Collins is in here because I don't have to hear about Texas. So for the next 2 minutes or so, Kevin Kelly and I are getting ready to wrap up this show by just shooting it back and forth, talking about some college football playoff. I'm not going to lie to you. My worst nightmare has come true. Either Notre Dame or Penn State is going to the national title game.
Yeah.
I just don't. Honestly, I'm an SC fan. So that's where the Notre Dame hate comes from.
So did I somehow. That was really
it's our generation. Though.
Me and my brother saw the whole Reggie Bush phenomenon and jumped aboard pretty quickly.
I met Pete Carroll when I was in high school, and obviously considering what USC was doing, they couldn't really have conversations. And I remember somebody tried to introduce me to Pete, and he was like, "Is he in high school?" And everybody was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "I can't talk to him."
Oh yeah.
And he turned around and was like, "Well, how you doing? I'm Pete Carroll." And I was like, "Dog, I'm floored. I'm floored right now. I'm at a loss." But just like you just said before, that love for SC by default creates a huge hate for Notre Dame. I don't necessarily have that with Penn State. I just look at Penn State and I just go, eh. So now, knowing that one of those two will be in a national title game, I feel personally a way about. But in the back of my mind, I got to get a round of applause just because for the first time, we will get a black head coach in the national title game.
Which one do you think advances?
Ooh-wee. I'll say this before I answer really quick. Every team in the postseason has looked away at some point this year, maybe once or whatever the case may be. Everybody goes back to Illinois for Notre Dame, right?
Yeah. or Michigan or Ohio State.
Right. And a couple of times Texas not even look good sometimes in games that they win.
Yeah.
I think the team that has the fewest of those situations is Penn State.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, who knows what can happen, right? If you want my winner really quick, for a winner of it all, I'll give it to you now. Because of what I just said about the Longhorns,
OSU.
I think they pull it out.
The Longhorns.
I do.
Really?
Because I've watched them not look good in certain moments.
Mm-hmm.
Like the rest of these teams, with the exception of Penn State for the most part.
Yeah.
But most of the times that I'll go back to certain games and be like, well, they didn't really look good in that game. You go back and you remind yourself, damn, they still won.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, they will find a way to win tomorrow.
They have found a way to pull them all out, even with all the tough ones. Their run game has kind of struggled since the playoffs, but yeah, I would pick them in that. OSU in that one personally.
Okay.
And then Penn State, OSU.
If that's the case, and this is a national title game with a little more juice on it than if we get Ohio State and Penn State.
That'd be a fun one. Yeah, and then obviously like Drew Aller for Penn State's taking a little rise and his NFL standing and stuff. So that's been fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, I think their defense is obviously nasty. I think a lot of it might come down to Carter plays and how healthy he is.
Right.
But yeah, I'd still pick Penn State.
I told my dad coming into this year that college football was at a state where anything could happen this year. And I told my dad probably before the season started, but I definitely told him in week 0 because he's a Florida State fan, so we talked. Yeah, that was a fun conversation. By week 2, my dad was over it.
Really?
Just so you know.
I would be too.
By week 2, he was like,
Yeah, I
he
wouldn't.
was like, I don't care anymore. I was like, I had to remind him.
How can you with that?
Do you know who your quarterback is? And he was like, well, yeah, but and then I talked about the Clemson days, and he was like, and we went and got him. I was like, yeah, call it what you want. I told my dad that no team was going to end this year with a perfect record. And I told him that it would be one of those years to where everybody is going to beat up on everybody.
Yeah.
And as a result, we're going to look at the national champion, and it won't be one of those, oh, this is the greatest team in history, one of the greatest teams in history, send them to the Hall of Fame, whatever. This is going to be one of those moments where everybody looks in hindsight and they go, remember when this team lost to Northern Illinois?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when this team put up 13 points against Michigan?
Yeah.
Remember when this team almost lost to Arizona State to open the play? These are the moments that we're going to have from one of these champions. And to me, that might be the biggest and the best story for the college football playoff.
I agree. Yeah, the parity has been. I think I'm traditionally not the biggest college football fan. I think college football has been the most enjoyable sport for me, and has like objectively been like the highest value, relatively speaking. It's been so entertaining to watch all year. So I think we're in for a good finish too.
I think you're absolutely right. And another thing, I put a bow on it, guys. From me, from Kevin, from Sean, keep on talking, man.